Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto inherited Minato's genius and mastered the Flying Thunder God, Naruto times Temari, Part 3. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Fanfiction.net. Zabuza was resting on a cot with a blanket over him. He did not like the fact that he had lost to Kakashi. That damn Sharingan. He hated its abilities, copying off the hard work and dedication he had put into learning his jutsu in a simple blink. His fists clenched in anger. He could not wait to tear that eyeball out and stomp on it. Moments later, a short man dressed in a business suit and two samurais as bodyguards entered the room and went over to where Zabuza was. So the terrifying demon of the mist is crippled after facing a few kids and a ninja. I don't think I'm getting my money's worth when it comes to paying you, Zabuza. Perhaps I should just kill you and spare myself the pain of losing any more money, the short man sneered at the bed resting Nin. Gato walked over to Zabuza and reached out to strangle him when a figure appeared out of nowhere and grabbed his wrist, before ruthlessly twisting it. You will not harm Zabuza-sama. I won't allow it, came the hard voice of Haku. He twisted Gato's wrist further to just before the point of breaking it to drive his point home. Gato shrieked in pain and fell to his knees. Hands off our boss. One of the samurai took a step forward when Haku grabbed a kunai and threw it at them. The samurai dodged it as it got buried in the wall behind them. Seeing them distracted, she pulled out two of her senbon and threw it precisely at a point in both of their arms that it was rendered immobile. The temperature in the room dropped a few degrees as Haku whispered with deadly intent, I missed your vital points on purpose, so don't test me. Gato snarled as he got up to his feet after Haku released him, insolent brat. You and Zabuza had better finish the job I gave you, or there will be consequences. With that, he exited the house, followed by his bodyguards whose arms were still immobile. You know, you didn't have to do that for me. I could have taken care of it myself if it came to that. Zabuza commented as he fingered the kunai in his hands under the bedsheet. I was aware of that, Zabuza-sama. But as your tool, I will always protect my master in any circumstance, Haku said with a smile. Zabuza sighed, in any case, I will be back to full strength in 3 more days. And when I am, his voice turned murderous, Kakashi will die. After getting outside, he walked to the spot he was training in since morning. There's something I don't get. His father was killed, and while that is obviously the cause of grief, why hasn't Inari moved on? Naruto asked Kurama as he neared the training spot. Kurama bluntly pointed it out. Not everyone moves as fast as you do, Naruto. While you quickly moved on from a weakling to making yourself stronger, you are one of the few who can do it that way. Majority of the people are afraid to let go of the grief, afraid that they will lose the connection that binds them to the person who they held close. Naruto took his time understanding what Kurama told him. He knew that whenever a person lost one of their close ones, they tended to hold on to that feeling for a long time. But it never worked in Naruto's favor, holding on to despair. Instead, he made a choice on what to do about it. Every time when he fell down and had difficulty in finding a reason to get up, he would forcefully shake himself out of that state and willed himself to get up. Simply because he had no reason to stay down either. The purpose of life is to keep moving, and staying down in one spot defied that very purpose. Reaching the spot, he took a deep breath. With Kurama's help and dinner, Naruto had replenished a little less than 2/3 of his reserves. He was thankful for the fact that every time he spent chakra and replenished it, his reserves would grow, just by a little. At one instance, it won't even be noticeable. But in the long run, it would be beneficial. He made a half ram and 40 clones appeared, smokeless and soundless. The clones divided themselves into 2 groups of 20 as before and awaited their orders. Naruto thought for a minute, and spoke up, 20 of you will work on the Fuden Jutsu we learned today. However, I don't consider it mastered until I've managed to perform it perfectly with just one hand seal, considering how strong my affinity is. TH group on the right nodded and Flash stepped away to a new location. Naruto turned to the remaining group, I will be working with you all. We will work on perfecting the Suiden Jutsu this night. After perfecting it, we will work on mastering it like the Fuden Jutsu, with one hand seal. Hi, came the chorus of the group. And so they began their training until all the clones dissipated and Naruto fell unconscious. Haku wore a pink kimono with red cherry blossoms and wooden sandals. He was carrying a basket and slightly humming to himself. While boys of his age would cringe at his choice of clothes, Haku had no such problem. In fact, he wore them just so he could witness the absolute shock on people's face when they figured out he was a boy and not a girl. It was amusing. No, scratch that, it was always downright hilarious. After an hour of walking, he came upon what he was searching for. Kneeling down, he began to pick herbs. His basket was almost half full when he felt something off. Getting up and turning around, he watched the scene with mild amusement and curiosity. 20 feet away, he saw the boy his master had fought 3 days ago. Naruto. His mind supplied helpfully. From what he had seen in the fight, he was very skilled, both in body and mind. He knew how to perform elemental jutsu, which his master had told him that no genin is capable of. His use of them, incorporating them into his tactics, such as when he beat Zabuza's clone. Granted, that clone only held 1/10 of the original's power, the feat was nothing short of impressive. And he had come up with a strategy to free his sensei, on the fly and had to land 2 hits on Zabuza. This boy was extremely dangerous. The boy was laying down, limbs spread away from the body. He was not even aware of the birds that had taken perch on him. Haku had an internal debate. He could either quietly collect his herbs now and leave, or he could kill him and save some trouble later on. He stretched his arm towards Naruto's throat, silently deciding to kill him now and swiftly, to spare him the pain. I would advise against that. Haku jumped back in surprise and watched as Naruto instantly opened his eyes, as if he was not asleep at all. But his slightly puffy eyelids gave it away that the boy had been asleep, but woke up due to feeling his presence. Naruto took a few moments to shake off the drowsiness from his eyes before turning to address the girl. Jolting me awake hasn't been pleasant for anyone who has done that. Haku watched as he kipped up to his feet before working out all kinks in his joints, all the while, completely ignoring his presence. Naruto worked out the stiffness in his body while simultaneously going over the results of last night's training. The group of clones practicing the Fuden Jutsu were able to reduce the number of hand seals to 1 and execute it perfectly. Well, that's one good thing, he thought. He and the group of clones practicing the water jutsu had also perfected it. Naruto could now use Suidana, water style, water severing wave perfectly with all 5 hand seals. In addition to that, he also had the Nadime's notes on that jutsu to help him shorten it to just 1 hand seal. He finally turned to face the girl, who he found was quite pretty. So, what are you doing here? His question snapped Haku out of his trance and he bent down to make it appear he was picking herbs. I'm picking herbs for a friend. He's quite ill, you see. Haku sincerely hoped his voice did not waver. Naruto, to his credit, only rose an eyebrow. Then you might want to avoid that herb. I've read it's quite poisonous, he said, nodding towards the ground. Haku looked down and an embarrassed blush came over his face. He was going to pick a herb that was more suited to make poison than antidote. To cover up his embarrassment, Haku decided to introduce himself. By the way, I'm Haku. Naruto extended his hand. Uzumaki Naruto. Nice to meet you, Haku-chan. Haku inwardly laughed as he imagined Naruto's face when he revealed he was a boy. For now though, nice to meet you too. Naruto gestured to her basket. Can I help you in collecting those herbs? Naruto and Haku collected herbs to fill Haku's basket. Why are you collecting the herbs so early in the morning, Ne-chan? Haku replied with a question of his own. What are you doing here so early in the morning? Naruto internally narrowed his eyes at the attempt to avoid the answer, but answered nonetheless, I was training in the night. Guess I fell unconscious due to exhaustion. Haku asked, so, you are a ninja? Naruto nodded with a smile. Haku gave a small worried frown, but isn't that dangerous? What if you get killed? Naruto shrugged, I may. It comes with the territory. If I die, that means I was meant to, so running away from my death would be futile. If I was meant to die so soon, I would have been killed many times over already. Haku gave a small sound of understanding, I see. And why are you training? Aren't you strong enough? Naruto shook his head, I may be strong, but there's always room for improvement. Besides, Becoming stronger means I will be closer to becoming Hokage, he ended with a grin. Haku stared at him for a few moments, then spoke. You train because you want to be strong enough to protect your precious people, don't you? Naruto gazed at Haku with something akin to respect in his eyes. His azures stared into her light brown as he whispered, go on. Haku knew from the moment he gazed into Naruto's eyes that Naruto fully knew what he was talking about. Nonetheless, he spoke, I believe that you have precious people and you are working hard to grow stronger to protect them. If you have something to protect, only then you can be truly strong. Naruto kept his intense gaze on Haku, who returned it without flinching. After a long moment, Naruto smiled and said, never have I met anyone before except my Gigi who shares my understanding of fighting to protect. You have the most accurate idea of where strength comes from, Haku-chan. You have my respect for that. Haku smiled and stood up from where he was sitting and picked up his basket. You will become strong, he stated to Naruto before walking away. Time to reveal his secret. Oh, and by the way, I'm a boy, he said, turning to flash a smile in Naruto. He almost lost it when Naruto's eyes bulged to the point Haku feared they would fall out of his eye sockets. Naruto couldn't believe it. He thought he was talking to a girl, a very pretty one at that. Hell, even prettier than Hinata. Finally regaining his composure, he narrowed his eyes at Haku, who was barely restraining his laughter. I bet you do that to everyone just to see their reactions, don't you? Haku shook his head, no comment. That was an answer in itself, Naruto thought as he watched Haku walk away. As he walked away, Naruto allowed his thought process to take over. Haku was obviously not a normal civilian. When Naruto opened his eyes, it was quick, but Naruto had managed to note that Haku had almost taken a fighting stance. The reaction was performed on instinct, which left no doubt that Haku was a fighter, and an experienced one at that. Second thing, Haku's chakra felt strange to him. While he was still refining his sensing abilities to the point where he could sense people's affinities, he sensed the bare minimum. Haku's chakra definitely had water, and something which was rough and sharp at the same time. The closest thing to that description is the wind, he deduced. But what did those two add up to? Multiple affinities usually point towards the presence of a bloodline limit. Before he could continue his thought processes, he sensed Sasuke coming to him. Putting on a smile, he greeted his teammate, good morning, Sasuke. Sasuke grunted in response before saying, you missed breakfast, Naruto. Naruto blinked in response, then shook his head. He would go back to see if any breakfast was left. He always went crazy on an empty stomach. He walked past Sasuke, who was warming up with some stretches. Naruto had no doubt the boy was going to put his tips to test while climbing the tree. Reaching the house, he went inside and found Tsunami washing the plates from breakfast. Hesitating a bit, he called out, Tsunami-san. The woman turned and smiled upon seeing Naruto. Naruto-kun. You're back. Her smile turned into a concerned frown. Are you alright? You were training all night. What if you had caught a cold? Naruto shook his head, amused at the notion. He had never been ill in his life, courtesy of having the Kyuubi residing in him. I don't catch a cold, Tsunami-san. I was wondering if you had any leftovers from breakfast. Tsunami's face instantly brightened. Oh right. I do have some leftovers I saved in case you came for breakfast. It explains why it seemed Sasuke-kun ate only a little. The last part was said in a mutter, but Naruto's sensitive ears easily heard it. What was that about Sasuke, Tsunami-san? He inquired ever so politely. Tsunami explained, Sasuke-kun seemed to eat only a little of the breakfast. When I asked him he said that you would probably be late for it, so he was saving it for you. Naruto blinked twice at that. That was probably the kindest thing Sasuke had ever done for him. Then again, I gave him the tips to master tree walking. He must have saved breakfast just to get even, Naruto thought, knowing extremely well that Sasuke hated to be indebted to anyone. Now usually, saving breakfast for someone was not that big of a deal, but since it was coming from Sasuke, Naruto would call it even. Sitting down at the table, he swiftly ate everything that Tsunami laid out for him. While not nearly enough to get him full, it was more than enough for him to call it a satisfactory meal. He finished his meal and washed his plate, easily ignoring Tsunami's protests. Stretching his senses, he found that Kakashi and Sakura were upstairs. He had already seen Tazuna in the room next to the dining room, so he thought that Kakashi was probably going to have Sakura guard him today. Well, that won't do. He scowled as he headed upstairs. He opened the room where he sensed Kakashi's chakra and saw that they were both ready to head out. They both blinked when they saw him. Naruto, you're back? Sakura dumbly asked. Naruto scowled deeper. Very astute observation. Sakura, he commented, sarcastically, of course. Sakura blushed a little at being embarrassed by him. Naruto turned towards Kakashi, who was looking vaguely amused. Kakashi-sensei, can I guard Tazuna-san today? Kakashi rose an eyebrow at the new suffix, but did not say anything. Thinking over, he thought that having Naruto guard Tazuna was an excellent choice. Naruto was the strongest of his genin, and was easily able to hold himself against Zabuza long enough to escape. He didn't need to worry about him for another 3 days, unaware that the man would recover in just one more day. Also, Naruto had an excellent way of retreating should the situation gets worse. He answered, I don't see why not. Have you completed the training that you were doing last night? Naruto nodded. Kakashi nodded in approval, before turning to Sakura. Sakura, you are with me and Sasuke today. Naruto, you will guard Tazuna today. However, he paused and frowned as an uneasy feeling settled in his stomach. He didn't know why, but he trusted his gut feelings. You will return 2 hours early today. I have a feeling we will be facing Zabuza much sooner than 3 days later. Naruto frowned but nodded. He would keep lookout for any trouble while Tazuna worked. His danger sense would come in extremely handy in that field. Don't forget about your training, Kurama reminded him sternly. Naruto nodded absently as he changed his clothes into an identical set and restocked his hip pouches from his sealing scroll. After double-checking that he was ready, he quickly exited through the window and briskly walked to the front where he found Tazuna waiting. Tazuna looked surprised at his presence. You will guard me today, Naruto. When Naruto smiled and nodded, Tazuna chuckled. Well, it looks like I have nothing to be afraid of. Now, let's go already. I'm late. Naruto held up a hand. Wait a minute, Tazuna-san. I'll back in a moment. With that, he flash-stepped away at his highest speed to last night's training spot. Wasting no time, he created 90 shadow clones. The whole clearing was full of them in mere moments. 30 of you will work on mastering the Suiden Jutsu we perfected last night. The rest of you, divide yourself into groups of 30 each and practice on learning and perfecting the 2 Suiden Jutsu I copied from Kakashi in the fight against Zabuza, he commanded his clones. All of them nodded as one and divided themselves, but Naruto was already gone. Appearing beside Tazuna so fast that the man yelped in surprise. Naruto spoke as if he had not noticed. I have a solution for your late problem, Asen. Not waiting to hear any protests, Naruto picked Tazuna up in a fireman's carry and flash-stepped away, the man's cries echoing into the distance. Appearing on the bridge in just 10 minutes, Naruto set Tazuna down, who looked a little green. Next time, give me a warning before you do that. Naruto blinked innocently at that, causing Tazuna's eyebrow to violently twitch. But he sighed and walked away to start today's work, grumbling about brats who were way too fast. Naruto only smiled and sat down, intent on working on his sensing abilities. This way he could train and keep a lookout for danger as well. While he stretched his senses as far he could, he reflected on what he saw on the way to the bridge. The town was barely alive, with all its people caught in the jaws of poverty. It was not a sight he wanted to see again. Children begging on the streets, even fighting among themselves for food. Naruto kept his senses active the whole time, trying and partially succeeding to make it second nature to him, something that would keep running in the background by itself while he focused on the more important tasks. Overall, it was an uneventful day, for which Naruto was thankful for. His clones had disappeared sometime in the afternoon, with good news. Suidana was now considered mastered, as Naruto's clones were able to reduce the number of hand seals to 1. Daibakufu no Jutsu, water style. Giant Vortex Jutsu, was surprisingly easy to learn and perfect, considering it was a high A rank jutsu. It helped that it had only 18 hand seals. He would work on mastering it when he returned to Konoha, when there was no threat. Suryuden no Jutsu, water style. Water Dragon Jutsu, was something he'll work on later. That jutsu was incredibly complex, consisting of 44 hand seals and requiring an extreme amount of chakra. While chakra amount was not a problem for him, he wanted to be cautious while using it, so he did not waste a single drop of chakra while executing it. He took Tazuna home, via flash step. They were just 5 minutes early of the assigned time Kakashi had given them. Going inside, he found Tsunami preparing dinner. "Hello Tsunami-san." The said woman turned, surprise in her eyes. "To-san, Naruto-kun, you are quite early today." Naruto shrugged. "Kakashi-sensei's orders. Anyway, can you please tell me how long before dinner is ready?" Tsunami smiled. "It will be ready in 20 minutes, Naruto-kun." Naruto nodded and walked outside, deciding to have a little fun. Walking over to where Sasuke was, he was not surprised to note the boy was easily sticking to the bark of a tree. Time for some torture. An unholy glint entered his eyes. "Sasuke," he called out. Seeing the boy look at him, he motioned him to come to him, which he did. "How about some training?" Moments later, Sasuke was standing on the side of a tree, a scowl on his face. "What kind of training is this, Dobi?" Naruto made a half-ram sign, causing 5 shadow clones to appear, as well as causing Sasuke's scowl to become deeper. He greatly envied Naruto's ability to make shadow clones, and that too in no small quantity. He hated to admit it, but Naruto could spam more clones than he could make regular ones, the ones that are an illusion. He had demanded Naruto once to tell him the secret to shadow clones. Naruto had scoffed at him and bluntly told him that he had no intention of doing that. Besides, shadow clones require a lot of chakra, something Sasuke didn't have to spare. He may not have his Sharingan, but once he had it, he had every intention to copy Naruto's jutsus. But the problem was, for a Sharingan to successfully copy a jutsu, all the hand seals must be performed. Sasuke had noticed that almost all of the jutsus he had seen Naruto executing, they were done with only 1 or 2 hand seals. The shadow clone jutsu was done only with a half ram, which meant Sasuke could not copy any of them. He was not an idiot. Sasuke knew that jutsus have multiple hand signs, which indicated Naruto was highly proficient in performing them with only 1 or 2. Quelling his frustration, he focused on what Naruto was saying. He had a very innocent look on his face, something that did not bode well. "The rules of this training are very simple. You have to remain stuck to the tree and not fall on the ground," Naruto said, choosing his words carefully. There was a loophole in what he said, but he was curious if Sasuke could read in between the lines. Sasuke scoffed. "Is that all? Then this will be easy." However, he was suddenly forced to dodge the shuriken that almost cut him. He was given no time to recover as a hail of shuriken came towards him, forcing him to dodge like his life depended on it. Naruto grinned savagely as his shadow clones gave Sasuke no time to rest. He saw Sasuke almost fall onto the ground, but he barely recovered in time. Deciding to give the guy some inspiration, he called out, "I don't see how this is easy for you, Sasuke. You are barely clinging onto the tree. And you've got 3 cuts, which means you are dead 3 times over." Absently creating 5 more to replace those whose shuriken were finished, he added salt to the injury. "When I mastered tree walking, I could dodge them with my eyes closed." That did it for Sasuke. He was already sour about the fact that he was the last one to master tree walking. But he had to admit, this training was good, excellent even. Naruto was forcing his body to make the tree walking almost second nature, so he could concentrate on the more important tasks. But he did not need to taunt him like that. He growled and concentrated on sticking to the tree first, then worrying about the shuriken. But Naruto gave him no time, forcing him to act on instinct. Naruto continued this for 15 more minutes, and by the end of that, Sasuke was a sweaty mess, lying flat on the back on the ground. He didn't even have the energy to glare at Naruto, who was looking entirely amused with him. "You, son of a," he wheezed out. Naruto shook his finger at him as if reprimanding a child. Now, watch your language. There are children around here. That bastard. He was having too much fun at his expense." Abruptly turning around, he said, "Dinner's ready. Let's go." He started walking, not waiting for Sasuke. Dinner was uneventful, the only thing amusing was watching Sasuke eat. The boy had attacked the food with the speed of a snail. He didn't have energy to even eat. After the dinner, Naruto was sitting at the table as Tazuna happily reported his progress. The bridge will soon be complete. Though I have to ask, why did you guys stick around even after I lied about the mission? Kakashi folded his hands as he thought about the answer. Not doing right when you know it is right is the coward's way. Those are the teachings of our previous Hokage. That is the way of the shinobi. We don't work just for money. Inari, who was looking down at his plate, looked at Naruto and immediately wished he hadn't. Naruto had his arms folded across his chest, eyes facing the ceiling and a small smile on his face. He looked completely carefree, as if he had no worries. Flashbacks of his father triggered inside his mind. Kaiza saving him, protecting him, making him happy. However, those thoughts only brought pain now. Something snapped inside him at that moment. Slamming his hands on the table, he stood up on his chair. It was enough to bring all the attention in the room towards him. But didn't care. He had had enough of Naruto's carefree, indifferent and bored attitude. Why are you trying so hard when you will only fail? You can't beat Gado's men even if you keep training. No matter how hard you try, weak people always lose to the strong ones. Though it addressed all the ninjas in the room, somehow, everyone felt that Inari was only shouting at Naruto. Naruto leaned on the table, chin on his hands and expression vaguely confused. It seems you are confusing us with the weak people, kid, he said, his confusion from earlier gone. However, Inari was on a roll. Shut up. It pisses me off when I watch you. You're always fooling around and having fun. You don't know a thing about suffering or how hard life is for people like us. You'll only end up getting killed. Tears were streaming by the end of his shouting. Kakashi had tensed up during Inari's shouting. To say Naruto doesn't know suffering, it wasn't possible to be more wrong. He expected Naruto to lash out and prepared to defend Inari, but nothing happened. Naruto was sitting there as if nothing had happened. There wasn't a silver of rage on his face. However, inside his mind, a storm was raging. His emotions were going wild. But he had to control them, push them towards a temporary goal. This kid needs a reality check. Keeping his voice even, he spoke. You know, you're exactly right. Kakashi looked at Naruto with surprise. That was the last thing he expected Naruto to say. The strong will always defend the weak. Gado, and by extension his organization, are weak. Nothing but a bunch of cowards who pick on people who can't out up a fight. They can only win against those who don't have the will to fight back. Against us trained shinobis, they are nothing. A dangerous look crossed his face, a look that even Sasuke and Kakashi got terrified of a bit. We aren't weak. Don't lump us in the same category as you. He scoffed disgustedly and turned his head away. We're nothing alike. Inari cried harder as he glared even more heatedly at Naruto. I'm glad we're not alike. I'd hate to be like you. You don't even have a care in the world. You don't know how hard life can be. The tension in the room was thick as everyone stared at Naruto, who for the first time in his ninja career, felt truly angry. His azure blues were as cold as the coldest ice, anger swimming inside them. Though he held back from channeling killing intent, his eyes were just as effective. The rage in his eyes was enough to put fear inside Inari, whose legs lost strength and was forced to sit down. Look at yourself, bitching and moaning about life. Thinking you have it hard. His voice was a whisper, yet it was so thick of rage that terrified his team. While Kakashi felt his rage was justified, Tazuna and Tsunami were wide-eyed. They had no idea such a sweet boy as Naruto held so much rage inside him. Naruto straightened up in his seat. His mind went back to the children he had seen on the way to the bridge. The ones who he had no doubt were orphans. You sit here, with a loving family, with a mother that cooks for you, worries for you and loves you. A grandfather that is building a bridge so this country can be free of Gado's reign. Naruto looked upon Inari with clear disgust. Some hard life you have. Sakura finally had enough of Naruto berating Inari. She felt that Naruto was being unnecessarily harsh on the boy. Naruto. That's too far. That was all she had gotten out before Naruto pinned a fierce glare on her, enforced with killing intent. Shut up. Sakura was not so terrified of the killing intent as much as she was of the smoldering rage in his voice. She fell back like a bag of potatoes. Naruto turned his gaze back on Inari, I'm willing to bet that you've never stepped a foot outside this house. Never seen the town, where children younger than you have lost their parents, both of them. He finally raised his voice, and felt a dark satisfaction in seeing everyone flinch, even Sasuke. I'm glad I'm nothing like you. I actually decided to do something with my life instead of becoming a crybaby, sitting in a place and whining how hard life is. News flash, there are people out there who have it far worse than you do. You are nothing but a coward who refuses to do something right. Even though his words were fueled with rage, his actions were anything but rough. He gently pushed his chair away and headed to the door. Kakashi asked him, Naruto, where are you going? Naruto did not look back as he replied, to burn off some of this anger. The door closed gently behind him. Everyone wondered what caused Naruto to have such a strong reaction to Inari's words. Inari sniffled before he too ran out of the door. That was a disaster, though not entirely unexpected, Kakashi thought, putting his book aside for the moment. He followed Inari out to the back, where the boy was watching the ocean. Do you mind if I join you? Asked Kakashi, startling Inari. Kakashi sat beside Inari, both looking out at the ocean. Naruto didn't say any of that out of spite. He's just a bit stubborn as all, Kakashi gently said. While what Naruto had said was the cold, bitter truth, the weight of those words was not something an 8-year-old can handle. Naruto was different. He had been handling such weight ever since he learned to walk on his feet. Naruto is just like you in the regard that he has no father. That was a lie. Kakashi knew that Naruto knew who his father was, but Naruto had no memories of him. In fact, Naruto has no memories of his parents at all. They were taken away from him at his birth, so he doesn't understand what parents are. He also had no friends, he explained. Inari's head lifted up to face Kakashi, confusion in his eyes. Kakashi continued, however, there wasn't a single moment when I saw him cry or get sulky. That was true. Naruto, until now, had faced the difficulties of life head-on and won, becoming stronger after defeating each challenge. He is desperate to make people recognize him, Kakashi said. Even now, when Naruto had a bored, indifferent expression on almost all the time, Kakashi could see it in his eyes. The hope that someone will recognize him for who he is was for all the world to see. Unfortunately for Naruto, the world acted ignorant. Kakashi chuckled softly. He got bored of crying at the world a long time ago. Inari looked down, beginning to understand what Kakashi was trying to say. Naruto was not born strong. He chose to get strong so he could live his life in a better way. Naruto knows where true strength comes from, just like your father. In fact, Naruto might be someone who understands you the most, Kakashi said. Inari was slowly understanding that Naruto might be the only one who was most similar to Inari. Kakashi I smiled, the words that he said to you earlier. He's probably told himself that over and over again. Naruto flashed to his training spot, fists tightly clenched. He felt a little bit of guilt creep over him for shouting at such a young kid, but that feeling was easily overshadowed by the rage he was feeling. The nerve of that brat. I don't know any suffering. He won't last a day living my life. He raged inside his mind. Kurama kept quiet, but was concerned for his host. He decided to let Naruto burn his anger off by himself, instead of talking it out of him. Making a half-ram sign, causing 100 shadow clones to appear. He was about to charge in headfirst and eliminate them in the most brutal ways he could think of, but visibly forced himself to think logically. This could be an opportunity for training. It slipped his mind completely that he would be too exhausted to go the bridge tomorrow. He dispelled half of the clones, causing the other half to look at him in confusion. We will try to reduce the number of hand seals in Sweden. Daibakufu no Jutsu from 18 to 10 for now. He could reduce them further when he was back in Konoha. The clones nodded as one and Flash stepped to the nearest water body, eager on getting it done by tonight. As he Flash stepped after them, he frowned and thought, I really should learn the body flicker technique. Flash step is good and all, but it is for short distance purposes, not to mention I can quickly travel long distances, much faster than Shunpo. Also, the body flicker is good for traveling quickly where I haven't marked. As he saw the clones working, he considered another idea. I wonder if the Nadaime has a scroll written on how to draw water from nothing. It would be incredibly useful in Suiten jutsus and survival as well. The whole night Naruto worked on reducing the hand seals of the Suiten jutsu. He was able to bring it down to 10, but it left him incredibly exhausted. He was barely able to drag himself back to Tazuna's house, and as soon as he was in front of his futon, he fell face first, asleep before even hitting the mattress. That is how Kakashi found him when he woke up. He woke Sasuke up, who looked at Kakashi, who was motioning him to be quiet, pointing at Naruto. Sasuke understood and they both quietly got ready. Heading downstairs, they found Sakura eating breakfast on the table. Her eyes held confusion when she saw a member missing. Sensei. Sasuke-kun. Where is Naruto? Sasuke spoke up before Kakashi could. That idiot trained so hard that he's knocked out. He won't be coming with us today. Kakashi nodded in agreement. They quickly had their breakfast and stood up, ready to leave. As they went outside, Kakashi turned to Tsunami. Please take care of Naruto. He's exhausted himself after training and won't be coming with us today. Tsunami frowned in concern. Are you feeling well enough, Kakashi-san? Kakashi rubbed the back of his head and chuckled. Yeah, I'm good. Tazuna nodded. Well then, let's be off. They walked away after that. Zabuza and Haku gazed at the workers on the bridge from their boat. Now is the time to attack, he murmured as he drew his blade. Naruto's eyes snapped open and immediately closed due to the brightness in the room. Groaning, he got up and slowly opened his eyes, letting them adjust. Damn, I trained too much last night, he thought. He checked his chakra reserves and winced slightly. They were a little less than half. Guess I did push myself too much last night, he thought. Oh, you think? Kurama's voice oozed sarcasm. Naruto winced again. Sorry Kurama. But I was a bit angry last night, he defended himself. Kurama snorted. A bit. Brat, you scared the hell out of everyone. A bit is an understatement. I'm proud of you. Naruto shrugged and got up, noticing for the first time that the bed around him were empty. Eyes narrowing, he deduced that Kakashi must have decided to let him recover today rather than come with them. He quickly completed his morning rituals and dressed up. Tying his hair into a neat ponytail, he ran downstairs to the dining room, where Tsunami was washing the dishes. She turned to him and smiled. Ah, Naruto-kun. If you are wondering where everyone is, your sensei said to let you rest today. Naruto nodded. He figured as much, however, he could feel somehow that today would be different, and as such, he needed to get to the bridge. Reaching into his left hip pouch, he pulled out a small black pill. I've got no choice but to eat this, he thought as he put the food pill in his mouth. It would allow me to fight 3 days straight without rest, but I would be left totally exhausted at the end of that. He grimaced at the taste. It tastes like shit, though. Not even 10 seconds after he had swallowed it, he felt his chakra getting replenished to the maximum. Hell, he even felt it expand a bit. His hunger disappeared, making him smirk. Time to go, he thought, his smirk getting replaced with his neutral scowl. Itakimasu, he called out as he departed. He had managed to master another level of his resistance seal in 1 week of training, increasing his raw speed even more. He tree hopped normally, choosing to conserve his energy for the battle he somehow knew will happen. As he crossed a clearing, his eyes landed on something, making him stop. That's interesting. Tsunami was cleaning up the kitchen when she heard the sound of the door breaking. 2 men with swords came inside and one of them grinned. Daughter of bridge builder Tazuna, you are coming with us. Inari heard the noise and saw his mother going with the men. He felt afraid, however, he forced himself to remain strong. I will save my Ka-san. Flashes of how Naruto called him weak fueled his courage. Naruto arrived back at the house just in time to see 2 wannabe samurai rushing at Inari, swords drawn. Wasting no time, he immediately released his seals and flash-stepped to Inari, quickly grabbing the mother-son duo and flash-stepping back just in time too. The swords sliced at the space where he was a moment ago. The thugs were dumbfounded. What just happened? Only then they noticed that Tsunami was gone. They turned around and saw a blonde kid in dark blue clothes, holding Tsunami and Inari a safe distance away. The presence of a Hittite beneath his left shoulder confirmed the fact he was a ninja. Naruto settled Tsunami down, cut her ropes. Tsunami-san, please stay behind me. Inari, good job on keeping them here, he smiled. Inari brightened up at the compliment. Turning to face the thugs, he adopted the expression when he was dealing with thugs who had no brains. An indifferent expression to convey that he didn't feel threatened at all. It served as an excellent way to piss them off. Every time. So Gato sent Dumb and Dumber to kidnap a woman. I'm not surprised at all. He kept his tone light enough so they would lose their cool. The one wearing the hat scowled and said, "You are just an incompetent ninja that Tazuna hired, aren't you?" Naruto pretended to inspect his nails. Incompetent. I don't know about that. I literally snatched Tsunami-san from you and you didn't even notice. The one with the eye patch scoffed angrily and said, "Let's see how you stop us." With that, both of them prepared to rush at Naruto, intent on slicing him into pieces. Naruto decided some mind games were in order. Snorting, he pointed his finger towards them. If anything, you are the ones incompetent. You failed to notice the two clones standing behind you. As he predicted, the two stupidly turned their backs towards him to inspect behind them. Finding no one, their eyes widened. He tricked us. But it was already too late. Naruto Flash stepped in between them and delivered a flawlessly executed split kick to their heads, easily knocking them unconscious and sending them on the opposite sides of the aisle and down the river. He doubted they would survive. He suddenly realized that he just performed his first kill. He had just ended another being's life. However, instead of puking his guts out like he thought, he only felt empty. He waited for some terrible feeling that one got after their first kill, but nothing came. And somehow, it made him feel even worse. Tsunami and Inari watched with growing horror as both men went flowing down the river. They turned to watch Naruto, who only had a blank expression on his face. Concern grew in Tsunami and she reached up to touch his shoulder. "Naruto-kun." Naruto snapped out of his trance and looked at her. Regaining his senses, he gave a serious look to Tsunami. "Tsunami-san, I must get going now." Putting two fingers onto the ground, he easily sensed his team's chakra and two other signatures, one of them very familiar and the other distinctly familiar. "Zabuza has already arrived on the bridge," he declared, ignoring Tsunami gasp. He had to get there quickly. Turning to Tsunami, he said, "Go inside the house and lock every door and window. Make sure no one can get inside," he warned her. The mother nodded and immediately went back inside the house. Naruto turned his gaze in the direction of the bridge. It was good that he had put his Hiraishin formula at one end of the bridge. He was gone in a blue flash. Things had escalated on the bridge as soon as the team and Tazuna got there. They had got there to see all the workers bleeding. "What's this?" Tazuna exclaimed, rushing up to one of them, the only one who seemed to be awake. "What happened?" A monster," the worker muttered, gritting his teeth in pain, just as a thick mist rolled in. "Here they come," Kakashi said as Tazuna backed up, and the ninja took up a defensive formation around him. "Long time no see, Kakashi," came Zabuza's voice through the mist. "I see you're still with those brats." He's shaking again. Poor kid. Where's the blonde one though? He was at least decent than the wimps you have with you now, he taunted. Sasuke grit his teeth at that. Even when Naruto wasn't here, the enemy still acknowledged him. Kakashi felt a surge of pride at Zabuza's taunt. Naruto was already making waves if a missing nin was acknowledging him. He replied back, "Sorry, but he's on a separate assignment. You get to deal with us today." There was no need to mention that the assignment was to sleep. A group of Zabuza's clones surrounded them. Sasuke gave a small grin and put up a brave face. "I'm just excited to see you again." Kakashi ordered, "Do it, Sasuke." Sasuke disappeared in a sudden burst of speed and mere moments later, all the Zabuza clones splashed into water. He saw through the water clones, came Zabuza's voice as the mist cleared slightly to show Zabuza and that fake hunter nin standing on the bridge. "It looks like a rival has appeared, Haku." "Indeed it does," the hunter nin, Haku, said with a nod. "But I still stand by my point. The blonde one was way faster than what I just saw," Zabuza said. Haku then started spinning incredibly fast, moving towards them. Sasuke tensed up and met him in between, his kunai clashing against Haku Senbon. "I don't want to have to kill you, but you won't stand down, will you?" Haku asked, which made Sasuke scoff. "Don't be foolish. I see. But you won't be able to keep up with my speed the next time. Plus, I've already gained 2 advantages. 2 advantages, Sasuke repeated. The first is the water on the ground. And the second is that I have occupied one of your arms. You will now only be able to run from my attacks. Sasuke's eyes widened along with Kakashi's when Haku started forming seals with only one hand, ending in a half-ram seal again. The water around them suddenly rose into the air and formed needles, which all flew straight toward Sasuke. Haku leapt away just in time, but it seemed Sasuke got caught in the barrage. Haku got his answer when he saw Sasuke had jumped up and was throwing shuriken at him. Haku neatly backflipped to avoid them, but when he looked up again, Sasuke was gone. You're pretty slow, came his voice from behind him. Now you can only receive and block my attacks. Sasuke slashed at Haku, who blocked with his hand. He almost missed the kunai in Sasuke's other hand and ducked low, right in path of Sasuke's kick, which connected to his mask. Zabuza couldn't believe it. Haku lost in speed. Sasuke couldn't help himself. Looks like my speed is better than yours. However, Zabuza quickly recovered and said, at this rate, you will be defeated, Haku. You know that, right? Haku got up and formed a strange hand seal. Yes. We can't have that now, can we? All of a sudden, the air seemed to get cold. Haijutsu. Makyu Hyusho. Secret technique. Demonic ice mirrors. The water on the ground around Sasuke suddenly rose up to form plates of water, which froze and took on an appearance akin to that of a mirror. The mirrors rose up and formed a dome around Sasuke, who looked nervous for the first time in the fight. Haku moved towards one of them and seemingly stepped into it. He appeared in one mirror, but as Sasuke moved to smash it, Haku appeared in every single one of the mirrors surrounding him. Well then, shall we begin? Haku asked. I'll show you my real speed. One Senbon attack came, then another, and another, all of them too fast for Sasuke to avoid. Screams of pain tore from his throat. Sasuke. Kakashi moved forward to help his student, but Zabuza blocked his way. I'm your opponent, remember. Your student's a goner, now that Haku has him trapped inside. Sasuke attempted a great fireball, but it was utterly useless. There wasn't even a scratch on the mirror. His screams continued. Sakura couldn't take the screams anymore, and with a shout of, Sasuke-kun, moved to help him, completely abandoning Tazuna and leaving him unprotected. She threw a kunai to him, but Haku came halfway out of a mirror and caught it with ease. I don't think so, he said. Sakura paled. He caught it. Well, that's what happens when you fail to put the enemy in your equation. Everyone turned towards the voice coming from the side of the mirrors. However, Haku was too slow to react. A knee caught him in the chin, easily sending him out of the mirrors. Naruto landed in a crouch, all ready for battle. Sasuke opened an eye and saw Naruto just outside the dome. Show off, was all he could get out before trying to get some air in his lungs from all the screaming. Standing up, he assessed the situation. Kakashi was about to engage Zabuza, the fake hunter Nin was out of his dome and Sakura had just suffered one of her stupidity bouts. Oh, and Sasuke was trapped. I can work with this. Zabuza was paying attention to how Naruto was assessing them. It's that blonde again. He was fast enough to catch Haku off guard, and it looked like he wasn't even trying. Eyes narrowing, he turned his attention back to Kakashi. Haku recognized the boy. It's him, from the forest. Apparently the weight got boring for Zabuza, who threw 4 shuriken at Naruto. Naruto's danger sense activated and he saw them coming in slow motion. Preparing to flip out of the way, he was shocked when 4 Senbon collided with the shuriken. Everyone had the same thought on their mind. Why did he save Naruto? Zabuza-sama, please let me deal with this. Haku requested. Kakashi found himself in a tight spot. Sakura couldn't move from her spot, and if Kakashi moved to help Sasuke, he would leave Tazuna open to Zabuza. Naruto critically assessed Haku. I assume you are the one who put this dome up. You have an ice bloodline limit, don't you? Haku stiffened, as did Zabuza and Kakashi. Your brat's smart, Kakashi, Zabuza said to Kakashi, who only narrowed his eye. Haku spoke. You are quite perceptive, Naruto-kun. However, you can't help your friend in any way. Sasuke chose this moment to throw a kunai at Haku, who simply tilted his head out of the way. I didn't forget about you. Sasuke grit his teeth. This was getting bad, very fast. Haku turned to Sasuke. I would have liked for you to just lie there quietly, but I guess I can't expect that. Very well. I will finish. That was all he got out before his face met with Naruto's shoe again. He was thrown back almost 7 feet by Naruto, who was looking at him like he was an idiot. Who turns their face away from an opponent to talk, you idiot? However, Haku was not the only one shocked. Sasuke, Sakura, Kakashi and Zabuza were thinking along a similar wavelength. He was fast enough to catch me off guard the same way, a second time. Since when was Naruto so fast? That doby. I didn't even see him move. Well done, Naruto. Keep him busy. Things are getting interesting. Now that Sasuke brat might actually have a chance of making out alive. Haku wasted no more time. Merging back into the mirror, Sasuke had to hold back a groan at what he was about to go through. He was unprepared, however, for Naruto to suddenly appear before him. Naruto already had a vague idea of what was about to happen, and so, he summoned 4 shadow clones. Taking up a pentagonal position around Sasuke, all 5 Narutos mentally called out while making the tiger seal. Sweden. Sujinheki. Water style. Water wall. A wall of water rose before each of the clones from the water beneath their feet, who manipulated it to cover their heads as well. Sasuke. Naruto called out in a low voice. Sasuke turned to look at him and saw him keep the tiger hand seal up. This is only a temporary solution. Whatever he's gonna throw at us. Senbon. Naruto rose his eyebrows. Okay, Senbon it is. They will pass through anyway then. I want you to be on guard in case he comes out of the mirrors. As Naruto predicted, Senbon came at them from all the directions. Naruto and his clones made their wall as thick as possible. Senbon still passed through, but it was clear that they were not doing as much damage as before. They weren't even dispelling the clones. Haku didn't know that Naruto had enforced them with chakra. I have to destroy those clones, he thought. It was only for a fleeting moment, but Naruto and his clones caught it. It all happened in slow motion. Haku splashed through the wall and swung around a Senbon, but Naruto's clones were busy maintaining the wall, so they weren't able to react in time and got dispelled. Naruto himself dodged the Senbon with a hair's breadth. As soon as the wall was down, Haku flashed back into the mirror. Your defense is meager. You cannot hope to win against me. However, Naruto had come up with a way to distract Haku. Interesting technique. This is. Moves partially into space-time, if I'm not wrong. You can move from mirror to mirror with enhanced speed. Since time is relative to speed, everything must move in slow motion for you, he smirked, hoping to throw Haku off. Sasuke gaped at the blonde. How the hell did he figure that out? Naruto had his own thoughts going. He has been maintaining these mirrors for quite a while now. His chakra reserves have to have depleted by now. Time to check. Making a snake seal, he took a deep breath. Fuden. Kei's Gyorai no Jutsu. Wind style. Wind torpedo technique. A ball of wind shot towards the mirrors and exploded with great force upon contact. Naruto was pleased to see the results. There was a crack. A big one. Sasuke's jaw dropped even further. How did it crack? My fireball couldn't even scratch it. Naruto decided to ignore him for the moment. However, Haku reformed the mirror and continued with his assault, this time, aiming at Naruto's vital spots. Naruto smirked and prepared to blow the Senbon away. He summoned 2 clones to guard his back, however, one immediately got dispelled, leaving him open to attack. And since Naruto was in the middle of performing a jutsu, he couldn't make any more clones. Senbon raced towards his unguarded side and he prepared to duck in response to his danger sense. Sasuke saw how confident Naruto was in this situation. How he never showed any fear, instead opting to instill fear into his opponent's mind, hoping to instill doubt. Seeing Naruto smirk, Sasuke had no doubt the blonde had a plan and it would work. However, seeing Senbon racing towards Naruto's unguarded side, something moved in him. He was able to see them in slow motion. He could see everything with crystal clarity, and he knew what to do. He jumped between the Senbon and Naruto, taking the full force of them. Naruto turned around and his eyes widened on seeing Sasuke take the attack. Not dropping his guard, he spoke with clenched teeth. What the hell was that, Sasuke? Why did you do that? Sasuke was losing consciousness fast, so he spoke. I don't know. My body just moved on its own. My My brother is still, out there somewhere. Don't die, Naruto. With that, he fell unconscious. Naruto couldn't check if Sasuke was really dead without dropping his guard, so he was forced to assume the worst case scenario. Sasuke was likely close to death, or was already dead. Unimaginable anger washed over him, making him tremble slightly. Unknown to him, a layer of extremely dense orange chakra began to cover him. Kurama's voice rang out in his head, Naruto. You are drawing on my chakra in your anger. Calm down, or you'll be nothing more than a berserker. Naruto argued back, he killed Sasuke. How do you not expect me to get angry? Kurama snarled. This is not the time to lose your mind, Naruto. I did not train you to be so weak against your emotions. Control them, flow with them in such a way that they become your weapon against your enemy. The anger in Kurama's voice snapped him out of his anger. Only then he noticed that Haku was still throwing Senbon at him, but an orange cloak prevented them from making contact with his skin. Kurama's chakra, he realized. Zabuza and Kakashi both halted at the feeling of the strange chakra. What is that chakra? It's too strong to be Kakashi, Zabuza thought, perplexed at the new presence. However, Kakashi perfectly recognized the chakra. This is bad. I need to end this fast in case the seal has loosened. Turning to Zabuza, he spoke. We're both busy men, Zabuza. How about we use one last move, winner take all, you know. Zabuza grinned under his bandages. Sounds interesting. The faster I kill you, the faster I get paid. Naruto shook his head and refocused on Haku, who was still throwing his Senbon. Immediately, a new plan began to form in his mind. Kurama's slowly drawing his chakra back into the seal, which means I won't be protected for long. That hunter nin is insanely fast, but not that fast that it can't be tracked by me if my danger sense remains activated, or Sasuke's Sharingan, which, if I'm not mistaken, allowed him to see the path of the Senbon and jump to protect me. There's no time for exploding tags as well. I have to time it perfectly. If I'm late for even a single moment, he will see through my plan. Naruto finished planning and put it in motion. He took out a kunai, put his Hiraishin formula on it and threw it on the ground, at the base of one of the mirrors. He repeated this until the kunai were in a hexagonal pattern. Then he flashed. Haku was honestly perplexed at what Naruto was trying to do. Those kunai, even if they were wrapped with an explosive tag, would not damage his mirrors. But he would have to finish this quickly. His chakra was starting to get dangerously low. He doubled his attacks on Naruto, who seemed to be waiting for the attacks to hit him. At the last moment, he seemingly disappeared. Haku's eyes widened as he saw that Naruto was now at a position opposite to his previous position. The scary part was, Haku didn't even see him move. A blue flash was all he saw. Recovering, he attacked Naruto at his new position, who flashed away again. This continued for a few more times before Haku decided to end it. His chakra was almost exhausted, so he would have to step out and attack Naruto's back as fast as he could. Naruto was flashing and dodging the Senbon with ease due to the slow perception given to him by his danger sense coupled with the speed of Hiraishin. He was playing the waiting game. He knew Haku was close to getting exhausted and he would attack Naruto's back because he no longer had the chakra for a direct confrontation with Naruto, who had yet to feel a drain on his reserves. Sure enough, his danger sense alerted him that the hunter nin was exiting a mirror from behind him, attacking his back. This was what he was waiting for. He immediately flashed away to another kunai to his side, watching with satisfaction how the hunter nin missed him, toppling forward. That was the moment he struck. Naruto's chakra was incredibly dense, so it augmented his physical traits greatly. He was faster, stronger, agile than majority people of his age. So when Naruto directed his chakra and condensed it into his fist, the force was something that would have sent someone of his size flying a dozen meters away. His fist made perfect contact with the hunter nin's cheek. Coupled with the momentum of his flash step, Naruto slammed Haku into the mirror, breaking it like it was nothing more than a hard sheet of paper. Haku was sent flying back from the force of the fist, all his mirrors shattered. He could not believe Naruto was this strong. To have a way to avoid his Senbon within the dome, chakra dense enough to crack his mirrors. He was pretty sure his jaw was cracked, although it would have been broken if not for his mask, which was now shattered. It was a miracle he wasn't knocked out. Naruto looked with shock at the hunter nin who was now revealed to be Haku. He couldn't help but feel hurt at how a person who he thought understood what Naruto stood for so perfectly would hurt his comrade. Haku gazed at Naruto with a blank expression. Why won't you kill me, when I've killed your friend? Naruto turned to look at Sasuke, who resembled more a pin cushion than a human. A brief surge of anger hit him, causing him to punch Haku straight in the gut. The force behind the hit knocked Haku down to his knees, but he knew Naruto had held back. Fighting the pain, he spoke. Was he not an important person to you? Naruto thought back to his meeting with Haku in the forest, where Haku had told him how had an important person, and how he would protect him. Zabuza's your important person, isn't he? He asked softly, though he already knew the answer. Haku nodded in agreement. He then proceeded to tell him how he had important people other than Zabuza a long time ago. How his father tried to kill his mother, how he tried to kill Haku because of his bloodline. Haku had killed his own father in defense. He had suffered through the most terrible feeling there was, the feeling that no one wanted you. Then Zabuza found him, raised him. Haku felt like he was Zabuza's most trusted tool. Please kill me. Zabuza had Kakashi where he wanted him. Kakashi had no way of knowing where Zabuza was, but Zabuza was aware of everything that Kakashi was doing. Or so he thought. Kakashi apparently had another trick up his sleeve. He summoned his Ninken had track Zabuza through the mist. The dogs had trapped Zabuza in his place, allowing Kakashi the time to execute his one original move, the lightning cutter. Reikiri. He held electricity in his hands, causing Zabuza's eyes to widen at the sheer amount of chakra Kakashi was exuding. That thing can cut through anything. Kakashi ran at Zabuza, intent on finishing this once and for all. Naruto found this so wrong, he just wanted to leave Haku alone. But it was evident, the pain that Haku carried. Zabuza was most like dead now, which meant Haku had no one left in the world. Again. Just kill him Naruto, if only to spare him the pain, Kurama's voice came through. Naruto gripped his kunai so tightly that his knuckle had turned white. Nevertheless, he prepared himself. He channeled pure, wind chakra through his kunai, causing it to resemble a blue dagger. May you find peace in your death, Haku, he thought as he flash-stepped to Haku, his kunai going for his heart. However, there is a saying that you always know when the people important to you are in danger. Perhaps that was the reason that Haku was able to grab Naruto's arm in mid-swing. Naruto was more than shocked, he was stupefied. How the hell did Haku grab his arm? It was then he paid attention to his senses. Kakashi's chakra had taken the form of pure electricity. Wait, if Kakashi-sensei is still using jutsu, then that means Zabuza is still alive. As is to confirm his thoughts, Haku spoke, sorry Naruto-kun, but I can't die just yet. Making some one-handed seals, he disappeared in a shunshin. Damn it. Naruto cursed before he too, flash-stepped to Kakashi's location, just in time to see Haku getting impaled by Kakashi, whose handed was coated in electricity. Zabuza took this opportunity to swing his blade at Kakashi, who jumped back. Closing Haku's eyes, he proceeded to brutally disable Zabuza's arms by piercing them with kunai. Well, it seems the demon of the mist is nothing more than a failure. All of them turned to face the owner of the voice, who was revealed to be a rather short man. Sorry Zabuza, but you die here. You see, hiring official ninjas costs a lot of money, so I hired a missing ninja like you. If you ninja had killed each other, it would have saved me the trouble and the money. A nasty smirk crossed Gato's face. If you ask me, you're nothing more than a cute devil. Sorry for the skip, but everything after this is the same until Zabuza collapses. One of the thugs called them out. Hey, don't think you bastards are off the hook. You just killed our only source of revenue. Now we will have to attack the town and steal all the valuables. The other thugs roared their agreement. Naruto turned to Kakashi. Sensei, do you have any way to take care of them all? Kakashi shook his head, an angry sigh escaping his lips. No. I used up too much of my chakra. Naruto grit his teeth. I could end this in mere moments, but I risk exposing the flying thunder god, damn it. He took a glance towards Sakura and Tazuna. Sakura had her head buried in Sasuke's chest and was sobbing her heart out. Just seeing Sasuke's body lying there unmoving caused his anger to resurface. Gritting his teeth, he turned to Kakashi. Kakashi-sensei, I want you to go back. Kakashi stared at Naruto, trying to figure what his student was up to. Tazuna-san is going to see it anyway, but please tell him not to mention it in front of our team. And prevent Sakura from gazing ahead. Block her view if you have to, he said with utmost seriousness. Kakashi's eyes widened. Naruto, don't tell me, you are going to use. Yes, Naruto cut him off sharply. Now back off, he almost commanded him. Kakashi though, only nodded and backed away, intent on following Naruto's instructions. If Naruto didn't want his team to know of his ace in the hole just yet, he would respect that. But Tazuna needed to be warned to keep quiet. After Kakashi backed away, Naruto faced the thugs, a serious look on his face. One of the thugs laughed. Oh, you think you can stop us alone, brat? Another one spoke up. Hell, at this point, even just one of us would be able to take you out. The thugs laughed at that. Heart pounding, he tried to not let his nervousness show. He was about to end the lives of almost 100 people, just go with it please. Steeling himself, he took out a kunai and put his formula onto it. The thugs noticed it and laughed even harder. Brat, you can't even take one of us down with that. However, Naruto ignored that and threw the kunai. Ninpo. Kunai Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The one kunai became hundreds and were scattered on the ground between Naruto and the thugs. The one standing on the front snorted, looks like you missed, kid. They charged with a roar after that, each one having some weapon with them. Naruto took two of his kunai in his hand and channeled wind chakra, making them look like a blue dagger. He took a stance and a deep breath and waited for all the thugs to enter the area of the marked kunai. When they did, he unknowingly said the phrase his father was feared for, I'll end this in a flash. What followed was a total massacre. Kakashi's eyes were blown wide after hearing Naruto speak. He only saw blue flashes, too fast for his Sharingan to keep track of. Naruto went into a trance as he flashed again and again through the thugs like a hot knife through butter. He wasn't even thinking. His body was moving by instinct alone as all the thugs were taken down in less than 5 seconds. He was going so fast that not even the droplets of blood were fast enough to land on him. Kakashi didn't know what to think or feel as he saw his student accomplish a feat that no one but his sensei could do. On one hand, he felt like his chest was going to burst with how much proud the man was of his student. On the other hand, he felt somber that Naruto already had so many deaths on his hands. So he settled for middle ground. He just relaxed as much as he could, knowing it was all over. He then turned to Tazuna to relay Naruto's words. Naruto stood in the middle of it all, not even covered by blood. He was in a haze. So many people died by his hand in just one day alone. Even though his chakra reserves were only depleted by a quarter, he felt more exhausted than ever. His legs lost the strength to remain standing and he sank to his feet, a blank expression on his face. He didn't know what to feel except so much guilt. Tazuna saw Naruto standing in front of all the thugs, no sign of fear on his face. But fear had gripped his heart. He almost expected Naruto to get killed and almost shouted at the boy to come back, but before he could do that, Naruto disappeared in a blue flash. Tazuna witnessed with growing horror how Naruto annihilate all the thugs with seemingly no effort. In just 5 seconds, all of Gato's thugs were dead, blood spilling from various places on their bodies. He almost didn't hear Kakashi call his name. Tazuna-san, Kakashi called out to the shell-shocked man. Tazuna turned his head to face Kakashi, who spoke in a low whisper, please listen to me. You must keep quiet about what you saw. No one, is to know that Naruto killed them all. Kakashi struggled for the right word. He looked down to see Sakura still sobbing over Sasuke. For once, Kakashi was glad for Sakura's obsession with Sasuke. He continued speaking, not even Sakura is to know. He saw Tazuna about to protest, so he glared at him, hard. He kept glaring at the man until he agreed. He then turned around and slowly walked, weaving his feet between the bodies until he reached Naruto. He knelt down beside the boy, who now had silent tears streaming down his face, finally realizing the weight of what he just did. Kakashi put his hand on Naruto's shoulder and spoke in a soft voice, it's okay, Naruto. It's okay to feel like what you are feeling right now after what you just did. I am surprised though, That you didn't puke your guts out, but I would be more shocked to see no remorse on your face. Want to talk about it? Naruto turned his teary eyes to Kakashi. I feel so guilty. I am trying to convince myself that I did it to keep Tazuna and his family safe. That they would have killed us in an instant and won't think twice about it. I feel like a monster. Naruto was full on sobbing by now, sinking until he was sitting between his legs. Kakashi nodded. The first time is never easy. Everyone thinks the same thing after their first kill, that they are too cruel to have taken another's life. But as long as you're capable of feeling remorse for your actions, you haven't lost your humanity. We are shinobi, and on missions we have to kill to protect those who can't protect themselves. Kakashi put his fingers on Naruto's chin and gently made him face him, but taking the life of a criminal who would kill innocent people without a second thought is not murder. Think of it like this. If we don't do our job right now, the next ones dying won't be the criminals, but their victims. Naruto's guilt had somewhat subsided after Kakashi's consoling. Kurama too had whispered some words of comfort, but coming from a demon, they were more along the likes of you did good, they deserved it and whatnot. He wiped his tears off and stood up with the help of Kakashi. A gasp from Sakura caught their attention. Both of them turned around and both of them choked on seeing Sasuke sitting up. He was in pain, judging from his face, but nonetheless, alive. Naruto gave a small smile at that. A majority of his guilt lessened at the fact that Sasuke's death wasn't on his hands. Kakashi gave a big sigh of relief. Thank God, he's alive. Sasuke opened his eyes with much difficulty and saw a mop of pink hair on his chest. He groaned. Get off, Sakura. It hurts. Sakura gasped and sat up, relieved, tears flowing. Sasuke-kun, you're alive. Sasuke sat up with Tazuna and Sakura's help and his eyes widened when he saw the amount of bodies on the bridge, with Naruto and Kakashi standing in the middle of it. His eyes widened. What happened? Naruto and Kakashi were holding their breath, nervous because they didn't know how much Sasuke and seen or heard. However, when Sasuke asked what happened, Naruto practically melted in relief. Naruto smoothly told a lie. Well, Zabuza really lived up to his title of the Demon of the Mist. It was a slaughter. Man. Sasuke narrowed his eyes, suspecting Naruto was lying. However, when Kakashi supported his claim, Sasuke let the suspicion leave. The sound of rapid footsteps caught their attention. Turning around, Kakashi and Naruto saw the citizens of Wave. Inari quickly ran up to Naruto. Ni-san. What happened here? Is everyone alright? Are you alright? Chuckling tiredly, Naruto fondly riffled Inari's hair. Everyone is alright, Inari. Though I do need to lie down a bit. Inari then saw the scene of slaughter for the first time. His eyes widened and he turned to Naruto. What happened to all of them? Thankfully Kakashi saved Naruto from answering. They were all killed by Zabuza. You should be thankful to him. Inari got confused, but isn't that the guy who was trying to kill Gigi? Naruto took a deep breath and let it out. A story for another time, Inari. Right now, we need to rest. All of us do. The people of the town had rejoiced on knowing that Gato was finally dead and Tazuna could continue building his bridge in peace. The team returned to Tazuna's house to rest. Everyone had been running on adrenaline the whole fight, so after the high was over, everyone was notably exhausted. Naruto had, much to Sasuke's extreme embarrassment, carried Sasuke back to Tazuna's house in bridal style, easily ignoring easy feeble attempts to let him go. When Sasuke had demanded Naruto to put him down, Naruto had smirked and in an all too innocent voice, said that Sasuke was too injured and as his teammate, it was Naruto's duty to help him. When Sasuke asked him why he didn't carry him like he did with Kakashi, Naruto smirked and replied, I just felt like embarrassing you. What Sasuke didn't know was that after the carnage that Naruto performed, he needed some form of relief. Unfortunately for Sasuke, comic relief always worked well for Naruto. Naruto had kept his amusement to himself, lest Sasuke reverted to sticking Senbon in his body from just cursing like a sailor. After that, things in the town were slowly getting back to normal. Naruto and Kakashi performed a raid at Gato's headquarters the night after the battle on the bridge, which they found out after asking for directions from the residents. They were surprised that many of them knew of the place, but avoided it due to fear. They had ransacked the entire place, looking for the money they knew that Gato kept. It was actually a good distraction for Naruto, and a very beneficial one at that. Flashback. Kakashi and Naruto entered the area of Gato, on full alert for any traps that lay ahead. They were here to find and confiscate all the money and valuables that Gato had earned over the years. Kakashi turned to Naruto. Alright Naruto, here is where we split. We probably don't have to worry about his thugs anymore because he brought them all to the bridge, but just in case there are, be on guard. You will be searching the main building, where the money is most likely kept. I will be scouring the warehouses. Since this country was not that rich to begin with, Gato would not be that interested in what it had to offer, instead letting his thugs have it and concentrating on his business. I will find the valuables and any evidence that can ensure that Gato's shipping company is shut down for good. All clear. Naruto gave a silent nod and as one, they dashed to complete their respective objectives. Naruto extended his senses and couldn't sense anyone, so he pushed on without hesitating. He blew the front door open with glee that he rarely felt. Perhaps I should blow things up more often, he mused. He climbed the stairs, carefully checking for traps in places he suspected they would be, but found nothing on the first 2 of 3 floors. He was almost disappointed, almost. He missed it. It was only after he lifted his foot that he heard the subtle click. The door was locked and his danger sense rang, slowing down his perception. He turned around just in time to see almost 50 knives rushing towards him, leaving no space for him to escape. He was insulted. Fuden. Tappa. Wind style. Breakthrough, and all the knives were blown back. Scoffing, he shook his head and simple jumped on the ceiling. Who would think to lay traps on the ceiling? He easily walked upside down and jumped down in front of the first door he saw. He opened it and looked around, noting that it was Gato's study. Eyes sweeping around, there was nothing worth noting except for a small safe. There has to be something important in there, he thought as he tried to figure out a way to open it. As much as he would like to, blowing it open was not an option as he risked blowing up its contents as well. Eyes roaming around, looking for a clue, he spotted a piece of paper that was sticking out of the lamp. Curiosity growing, he plucked that piece of paper and had to keep himself from cackling like the devil. The safe combinations, laid bare, just like that. Hurriedly, he put in the combinations and watched the safe open. To his mild disappointment, there was only a sealed envelope inside. Just what is he playing at? He muttered. Turning it around, his eyes narrowed as his fingers brushed across something. Dried glue, he inspected as he tore it with little difficulty. He took out another piece of paper and read it, seeing a whole new set of numbers written in similar format in comparison to another piece of paper. He chuckled. This guy is just asking to get robbed. Looking around for one last time, noting there wasn't any other safe, he got out of the study and walked down to the last room on the floor. He opened it and after seeing what was in there, he shook his head in disappointment. Leaving so many doors open, what the hell was he thinking? He asked himself as he walked close to the enormous vault door to put in the combinations. He felt almost bored as he put the combinations. The dwarf's memory must be terrible if he needs clues to remember his clues. He opened the door and barely kept his jaw from touching the ground. Piles of money taller than him stood in front of him. If Naruto had ever dreamed of drowning in piles of money, this would be defined as dreams turning into reality. Let's get to work then. All of this should be pretty useful in helping this country get back on its feet and then some, he decided as he prepared to make some shadow clones, but suddenly a thought struck him. A thought struck him, a thought that made his mind start wheeling. From the way he was thinking, all the parties could benefit from this, including him. But first, he needed to know how much money this was. Within a moment, 20 shadow clones popped into existence. Start counting, he commanded. The clones divided themselves into groups of 5 and started counting by dividing the pile into smaller groups. It felt like an eternity and Naruto feared that Kakashi would suddenly bust through the door, but a call from one of the clones caught his attention as he was looking out on the grounds. Boss, we're done, he called out. Naruto turned back to see that the one large pile had been divided into 5 smaller groups. He mentally dispelled them and his eyes widened at how much the big pile amounted to. 100 million ryo, he thought, dumbfounded. What the hell was he planning to do with all this money? He asked himself. He pondered over that for a while, in the meantime sending a shadow clone to give Kakashi a report of what he found. Altered, of course. Finally, he came to a decision. Considering that this was a high A-class mission, 1 million ryo could be taken from this and ease the burden off Tazuna. From the 99 million that remains, he would leave 90 million for the wave country, while the rest of it, he could take it for himself. Now that would normally make him feel disgusted with himself, taking the money that should go to the people of the wave country, unless he hadn't taken a look at Gato's records. Wave wasn't a rich country to begin with, so Gato didn't have much to siphon off, but what he did was no small figure. 30 million, collected over a number of years, was a very large amount, Naruto believed. That tremendously eased the burden of feeling guilty from his mind. He was giving back 3 times the original amount of money. With a firm nod to himself, took out 3 sealing scrolls. With the help of some clones, he divided the money into 3 parts, one for Konoha, one for Wave and one for himself. He sealed his part first and put it in his right hip pouch just in time as Kakashi entered the room. Quote, comma dot. What ridiculous amount of money. He breathed. Naruto slipped into his normal and innocent mode, the mode he usually used to take the blame off himself after pranks. Keeping his voice level, he nodded and said, yeah, makes you want to think what you would do if you had this kind of money. They both looked at the pile of money. Naruto added in, I already divided the pile up. 1 million for the cost of this mission, 90 million for this country to get back on its feet. He was counting on Kakashi assuming that there was 91 million ryo. Thankfully for him, Kakashi did just that. Kakashi nodded, not suspecting Naruto in the least. Good, you got some sealing scrolls. After seeing him nod, he motioned, seal them separately and let's get back. I've found what I needed. Hurriedly sealing the other 2 parts, they exited the headquarters. Flashback end. After they came back, it all went downhill. People who had abandoned Tazuna had come back to build the bridge. Naruto and Kakashi had informed Tazuna about the money they had taken from Gato's headquarters. Kakashi told him that he didn't need to pay Konoha for the increased difficulty of the mission since they had already taken it from Gato, which Tazuna thanked Kakashi massively for. A massive celebration was held after the bridge was completed. The celebration lifted Naruto's spirits greatly, especially the part where Inari looked like he wasn't the host of a pity party anymore. Naruto was subjected to hero worship, a concept he is grossly unfamiliar with. Nevertheless, he took it in stride and indulged him as best as he could. Finally, the day came when the team finally returned to Konoha. They were standing at the end of the bridge, facing a massive crowd. The Konoha shinobi graciously accepted the thanks given by all the people. They faced the family who had hosted them at last. Naruto could say without doubt that he had never seen the small family of 3 so happy before. Inari, it seemed, had finally stopped clinging onto Kaisa's memory and moved on. I can't thank you guys enough for doing all of this for us. You have done such a great favor to us that I don't think we can ever repay you. Waving off the protests that came from Naruto, he brightened up even more and said, whenever Konoha needs some serious repairs, just call for me and I'll be there. He shook hands with Kakashi and bowed to Sasuke and Sakura, who bowed back out of respect. Turning to Naruto, he offered his hand out to shake. Naruto looked surprised for a moment, but recovered and gave a strong handshake to Tazuna with a genuine smile. We really are going to miss you, Naruto, he said. Much to his amusement, Naruto blushed a little before acknowledging the man's comment. Naruto looked down to see Inari struggling to hold back his tears. It was a clear failure though, as tears flew like a bursting dam. You told me not to cry, he said as he furiously wiped his tears. Naruto smiled softly as he knelt down. It doesn't apply when you are happy, alright? Don't hesitate to cry if you are happy, promise me. He offered a hand. Inari gave a watery smile but shook Naruto's hand with as much force as he could. Hi, Naruto Nichan. With that, he stood up and with a final goodbye, Kakashi steered his team back to Konoha. A man in the crowd shouted, what are we going to name this bridge? Everyone murmured similar things, eyes turning to Tazuna. Inari tugged Tazuna's pants. Gigi, let's name it after Naruto Nichan. A childlike suggestion from a small child, who wanted something that reminded him of the person he looked up to near him. But it clicked perfectly in Tazuna's mind. A full smile blossomed on Tazuna's face at his grandson's suggestion, you're right. Let's name it The Great Naruto Bridge. He felt it was a great name, considering how Naruto played a big part in giving the town its hope back, and not to mention, he brightened up their family considerably. The ride back home was not what Naruto's teammates called pleasant. It was a very unfortunate way for them to discover what a speed freak Naruto was. Sasuke's jealousy reared its head when he saw his blonde teammate telling to Kakashi that they are going too slow and he was speeding up and he will meet them at the Konoha gates. That did not sit well with Sasuke. With that, Naruto had ran ahead of Kakashi, who knew exactly what Naruto was up to. He was trying to rile Sasuke up, and judging from the impressive scowl on Sasuke's face, it was working spectacularly. Kakashi was more than glad to sit back and watch the show. Sasuke increased his speed to catch up to Naruto, who would, unknown to Sasuke, smirk playfully and increased his speed so that he was just ahead of Sasuke. This continued until Sasuke was panting to just maintain his speed instead of outright falling behind his whole team. When they reached Konoha, no one was gladder than Sasuke, who was barely standing from all the exertion. Naruto, on the other hand, was barely panting. In fact, he seemed to be in deep thought. Sasuke mustered a glare as best as he could while panting heavily. "You are a freak," he said. Naruto, for his credit, blinked once and turned to him with a confused look. "Huh, did you say something?" It proved too much for Sasuke, who collapsed. Sakura ran to him, worry written all over his face. Naruto scoffed, and turned to Kakashi, who giving him a strange look. It almost felt like reverence and pride. "They grow so fast," he heard the man mutter while wiping a fake tear from his eye. Naruto rolled his eyes and spoke, "Are we going to the Hokage's office or not?" The visit to the old man was interesting. When Kakashi first told him what had actually happened on the supposedly C-rank mission, he took a deep breath and calmly asked the genin to wait outside his office while he had a word with Kakashi. Naruto had figured out instantly what was going to happen and walked out, but not before giving a shit-eating grin to Kakashi, whose eye visibly twitched. He knew that the blonde knew he was going to get chewed out, and he was enjoying it. 15 minutes of chewing out later, they were called back into the office again, where the Hokage congratulated them on surviving the mission and then congratulated them individually on their performance. Though things got a little awkward because he had nothing to praise Sakura for. After telling them to collect their pay from the mission desk, he told them to leave, except for Naruto. Kakashi told Naruto to be at their training spot at 8 before walking out. "Naruto, I want you to tell me the truth. Are you alright?" His eyes were full of concern. Naruto smiled softly. "Gigi, I'm fine. I've made my peace with what I did back on the bridge. If I hadn't did what I did, those thugs would have continued to terrorize the town. Also, giving the country a wave to rebuild itself was enough to lessen the burden on my mind," he explained. Hiruzen searched his face for any sign of lie, and exhaled in relief when he found none. When he had heard it the first time from Kakashi, he was so stupefied that the pipe had dropped from his mouth. Naruto had done exactly what his father had done in the Third Great Shinobi War. He could not stop himself from looking at the portrait of his now-dead successor. Seeing Minato's cold expression, he was reminded of how Minato's mere presence sent enemies running from him. He shuddered as he once again compared the similarities between Minato and Naruto, imagining Naruto instead of Minato. "Oh, Minato. If Naruto is even remotely similar to you, he will change the whole world. Of that I have no doubt." Looking back at Naruto, he could swear he had seen Minato standing behind his Naruto, having the same expression on his face. Waving his thoughts away, he said, "All right, Naruto. But if you have to talk about anything, you are welcome anytime," he added a smile. Naruto smiled and walked out of the office to the mission desk to collect his money first. The Chunin sitting there glared at him as he handed the money to Naruto. Naruto only gave a cool smile, further infuriating the man. After taking the scroll, he immediately used the shunshin to get to his apartment. He had a lot of things to do today. After getting refreshed, he sat down at his table and made a list of what he had to do today. First, put an order out for his Hiraishin kunai. They would be a bit different than those of his father. Second, secure the money he had taken from Gato. That was the easiest as it won't be going into the bank. Third, work out a deal to get his special kunai for free. He would have to work on that a bit. Nodding to himself, he set to work. The first and the last task he would be doing himself, while the middle one can be handled by his clone. He took out a paper and a brush and started sketching ideas for a new seal. The seal would be similar to the Nadime's Gojo Kibaku Fuda. If he wanted his third idea to work, he would have to offer the Higurashi weapons shop owner something interesting enough in return, as his order was quite tall. Ideas swam in his head as he worked out the original seal. Gojo Kibaku Fuda was a simple explosive tag with a small addition, a replication seal that would create an identical tag. The second Hokage had designed the chakra circuit such that it would first replicate the original tag before exploding. Then the other tag would create another tag before exploding as well, and so on. This would result in a chain of reactions that had the potential to be as powerful as a nuclear bomb. The best thing was only the first tag would be real, the rest would only be copies. He frowned a bit. Obviously, he could not give this exploding tags to Higurashi. The Nadime must have labeled this as a kinjutsu for a reason. He chewed on his bottom lip in thought as he tried to think of an alternative. He could modify a normal explosive tag to increase the power, but that was it. What else could he do? His eyes suddenly brightened up as he remembered his battle on the bridge. How he had used the kunai cage bunshin. It was similar to the tandem exploding tags, only it required a bit more chakra. I could simply replace the idea of exploding tags with kunai. He thought in satisfaction as he set to altering the seal to suit the kunai. Half an hour, he looked at the tag he had managed to create. It could be mistaken for an exploding tag from a distance, but a mistake was all it was. He created a clone, who took a kunai and wrapped the tag Naruto gave him. Going up to the roof, he faced the direction where the training fields were. Pushing half of his chakra, he threw the kunai. Normally, a hail of kunai suddenly appearing would be a cause of concern, but since it was the clone's kunai and as such, only a construct of chakra, it would dispel along with the clone. The clone watched with a self-satisfied smile as the kunai multiplied greatly. Seeing that the tag worked, he dispelled himself, which caused all the kunai to dispel. Gojo Kunai Renden was a success. Naruto gave a grin of satisfaction as he went through the memories. The tag worked, which means he could now go to the weapons shop. Gathering the tags, he stood up and created a shadow clones, instructions already given. He then used the body flicker to get to the Higurashi weapons shop. Opening the door of the store, he blinked at the girl who was standing behind the counter. She wore a pink Chinese top with a green lower and had her hair tied in two buns. She smiled at him. Hello, what do you need? Naruto rose an eyebrow at her. It was obvious that she was a ninja from the headband, and a one that specialized in weapons judging from her heavily calloused hands. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. You are? He asked. Politely, of course. Tenten replied. Higurashi Tenten, nice to meet you. Ah, so she was the daughter of the owner, he mused. Tenten, I need 40 kunai, 30 shuriken and 7 explosive tags, he said. Tenten wrote down the order and said, okay, I'll be back soon. As she walked away, he called out, Tenten. She turned around, blinking at him. Yes. Naruto smiled and asked, could you also call your father? I have a special order I need to run by him. Tenten narrowed her eyes at him a bit, which he responded by giving a cool smile. Nonetheless, she went to fetch his order and her father. He looked around the shop a bit, blinking when the memories of his shadow clones came to him. He nodded when he saw where the money was hidden, a place that no one except him knew. That would only be used in case of emergency. He snapped back to awareness as he saw a large man coming from the back of the shop. He was heavily built, as expected of a weaponsmith. Even though his large stature added to the intimidation factor, he had a gentle smile on his face. Tenchi smiled as he saw who had requested his presence. No matter how many times he saw him, Naruto only looked more like his old friend Minato. Naruto, how can I help you today? Naruto smiled and nodded his greeting. Tenchi-san, I have a special order that only you can see. He gave an apologetic look to Tenten, who gave a playful pout, but smiled and went inside the shop. Taking out a piece of paper from the counter and a brush, he started sketching. Tenchi's eyes widened as he started to recognize the shape that was being formed. It was the famed kunai of the Yondaime, only a bit different. While Minato's kunai's side prongs were slightly curved in a semicircular shape, Naruto's kunai's side prongs were straight, if not a bit shorter than the original design. The middle prong was also a bit longer. Unusual, like his father's, but not impractical at all. Seeing where Naruto was going with this, he said, I can see that you want your design a bit different, but it can be done. Naruto then decided to put his proposal forward. I was also hoping to arrange a deal between us for a future discount on these kunai. A trade, if you will. Tenchi rose an eyebrow in interest. Oh. Naruto grinned and pulled out the additional tags that he created. I think you will be very interested in these. In 10 minutes, he explained how the Gojo kunai Renden worked. At the end of his explanation, he put his offer on the table. I keep supplying you these tags, for free. In return, you supply me the special kunai, for free. A fair trade, considering their battle potential. Tenchi rubbed his chin in thought. He could see that the tags had a very high chance of selling. Hell, he might even say that the value of the tags were higher than the tri-prong kunai, as it was only an oddly shaped kunai and nothing more. Still, he needed to see how much thought Naruto had put into making these tags. I don't know, Naruto. Don't you ninjas have a jutsu that multiplies the number of kunai as well? Why would they use this tag and not that jutsu? Naruto had half expected this question, so he answered, the kunai Kage Bunshin is a variant of Kage Bunshin, so it uses up a large amount of the user's chakra, leaving them very little chakra and a high risk of getting chakra exhaustion quickly. In my tags, you only have to push a little chakra to multiply the number of kunai by large. Tenchi grinned, you have a deal Naruto. As long as you keep supplying these to me, you can get your order for free. Naruto grinned and held out his hand for Tenchi to shake, then we have a deal. You can keep these tags, so how long before I can get 30 of my kunai? Tenchi shrugged, you can collect them from me tomorrow. Naruto smiled and nodded, walking out of the store after collecting and paying for the order he gave to Tenten. He blinked when he saw it was already early evening. Might as well get some training done. Master those jutsus back from the wave, he decided as he made his way to the Senju library. He proceeded to spend the entire night training with his shadow clones, which were in an absurd amount of 200. Sweden. Daibakufu no Jutsu, to his pleasant surprise, required him to reduce only 2 more hand seals, bringing the number to 8. The Suiryuden, on the other hand, would require much more training. Reducing the hand seals to 30 was good and all, but the Nadaime was able to do it with just 4 hand seals. Finishing his training for the day, he turned in, exhausted more than he would like to admit. Naruto had a very uneventful start of the day after. He got up at 5, did his regular running routine with increased resistance, came back and showered. He ate omelets for breakfast, played around with seals until it was 10 minutes to 11 and then went to meet his teammates, who were irritated and angry at Kakashi, again. He thought that maybe, Kakashi might give them something interesting to do, like another C-rank mission or some training. But no, they did some lame D-rank mission of taking the weeds out of someone's garden, before Kakashi dismissed them, saying something about keep training. After that, he was aimlessly roaming around, thinking about what happened after their mission. It was the only highlight of his day until now. Flashback. Alright, you are dismissed, Kakashi said in his ever-lazy tone, eyes not moving from his book. Naruto groaned, come on, Kakashi-sensei. It is only noon right now, we have half the day to do some training. While Sasuke and Sakura didn't say anything, Naruto knew even they wanted something interesting to happen. Kakashi calmly flipped a page, Naruto, I dismissed you already. You can do your own training now. He looked up from the pages, trust me, it's better that you all train by yourself right now. Perfect whatever you have learned until now. I smiling, he was gone in a puff of smoke. Sakura turned to Sasuke, blushing lightly, Sasuke-kun, would you go out with me today, now that we're free? As usual, Sasuke scoffed and walked away saying, you heard Kakashi-sensei. I'm going to train myself. He looked at her from the corner of his eye, it's better that you do too. Right now, you are the weakest member of this team. Naruto winced at his teammate's blunt words, but what he said was true. A simple punch was enough to take Sakura out, which was not a good thing. Shaking his head, he formed a half-ram and vanished in a wind shunshin, leaving Sakura to her thoughts. He was walking towards a dango shop when he saw Team 10 coming out, chewing on some dango. Smiling, he walked towards them to catch up with Shikamaru and Choji. Oi! Shikamaru, Choji. The mentioned genin looked up in surprise and smiled when they saw Naruto waving towards them. Yo! Naruto. Shikamaru gave a lazy wave while Choji was more enthusiastic. Ino, on the other hand, scowled a bit. She never liked Naruto. He was too loud and annoying according to her. Naruto stopped in front of them. What's up? Where's Asuma-sensei? Choji replied. Asuma-sensei dismissed us for the day. What about you, Naruto? Naruto shrugged in response. Kakashi-sensei dismissed us early too. Very unusual of him, if you ask me. Ino couldn't hold back her sneer. Well, no one's asking you. Naruto glanced at Ino and rose an eyebrow. Nice to see you too, Ino. That was all he said before he turned to Shikamaru, asking if he and Choji could spar with him. Shikamaru sighed, muttering troublesome under his breath, but agreed along with Choji. It would allow them to see how far they have come. Though he knew that they wouldn't be defeating Naruto anytime soon. Ino scoffed, smirking at Naruto. You really shouldn't be asking to spar with Shikamaru and Choji. They would wipe the floor with you, dead last. Choji did not like what Ino implied and he prepared to defend Naruto when Naruto spoke before him, amusement written all over his face. Oh, really? Ino nodded. Even I could kick your. I bet that on the C rank turned A rank your team went on. Sasuke-kun saved your and defeated Zabuza. Naruto looked confused and asked Shikamaru, how do you guys know about that? Shikamaru replied, Asuma-sensei apparently heard it from your sensei and told us. Naruto nodded and turned back to Ino. This was the perfect opportunity for him to teach Ino a lesson about how to not act like a bitch. He asked her, how about a spar, Ino? If you said you can beat me, then I wouldn't mind a workout right now before losing to you. Ino smirked, thinking she could easily beat him. Then let's go. Training Ground 10. After they reached there, Naruto and Ino stood in front of each other, with Shikamaru acting as the referee. This is only a spar. You only knock the other unconscious, not kill them. Are you ready? Even speaking in his lazy tone, he sounded serious. Must be a Nara thing, he mused. Naruto and Ino nodded, falling into their stances. Shikamaru chopped the air. Hajime. He fell back after that. Naruto, keeping his guard up and deciding to bait Ino, relaxed and put his hands in his pockets. Ino scowled and asked, what the hell are you doing? Naruto cleaned his ear. It's just that. You don't threaten me, Ino. Ino snarled and dashed forward, throwing a punch, intending on breaking his nose. Her anger turned into shock when Naruto simply stopped her punch with one hand. He didn't even look like he tried. Shikamaru and Choji were surprised as well, but not as much as Ino. They knew Naruto was not the dead last, even in academy. If anything, he was perhaps the strongest of the rookies. Ino's going to get beat up, isn't she, Shikamaru? Shikamaru simply hummed in response. Ino was getting very frustrated. Naruto was dodging her attacks like he had all the time in the world. And he was blocking them like they had no power behind them. She decided to goad him. HMPH, are you too afraid of countering? Or you don't know how to counter at all? Naruto was quickly getting bored of Ino's pathetic attacks and pathetic ways of goading him. Better to end this, otherwise I'm gonna fall asleep, he thought. Catching a punch that was coming towards his face, he gave a devastating punch to her gut, knocking the air out. He didn't even give her time to fall to her knees, following with an uppercut to her chin that was strong enough to straighten her up and finishing off with a spinning back kick that knocked her a few feet back. Ino was barely keeping from crying in pain. Her stomach felt like someone had been jumping on it for an hour and she was pretty sure a few of her teeth were knocked loose. She barely registered Naruto's mocking voice. You sure showed me, Ino. You're just as pathetic as Sakura. What were you saying about kicking my again? Gritting her teeth, she fought the pain and began to form hand seals, only to get knocked out. Naruto shook his head. Some people are nothing but full of air. He then glanced at the other two, who were barely surprised. Well, patch her up and tell her that the next time blows hot air, it better be fire for her own sake. With that, he walked away. Flashback end. Naruto was snapped out of his musings when he heard something behind him. Glancing back, he barely registered the urge to smack his forehead when he saw a brown box with two holes facing him. It was an eventful day, meeting the old man's grandson. He had managed to, somehow, become a rival of Konohamaru in becoming the Hokage. He had knocked some sense into that boy's head, showing him that not everybody bowed to him just because he was the Hokage's grandson. Ever since that day, he became an object of hero worship. Turning to the box, he said with some exasperation, Konohamaru, square boxes with holes don't exist, you know. A squeaky, muffled voice came from the box. Wow. Discovering my presence this early. As I expected from my rival and my hero. There was a bright explosion of colored smoke, from which 3 figures emerged, coughing. Hey, you used too much powder. It was then they noticed Naruto looking at them with something akin to amusement. Naruto was looking at Konohamaru and 2 other kids he had never seen. One was a boy with black hair, glasses and a runny nose. The other was a girl with orange hair, a slight blush on both of her cheeks. Konohamaru grinned up to Naruto. Boss, you have some time, right? Naruto looked confused at what he was trying to say at first, but he quickly pieced it together. Hyper 8-year-old kid with friends, asking if he was free or not. Yep. They wanted him to play ninja with them. How about you humor them? Kurama asked with a grin. Naruto rolled his eyes. If I humor them, Kurama, I would be stuck with them all day. That is something I don't want to do, he said with resignation. Turning his attention back to Konohamaru, he said, while I do have some time, I won't be playing ninja with you. You guys get too carried away. He tried to gently let him down. Then something struck him. Hey, you haven't introduced your friends. Who are they? I'm Udon and I like numbers. The black-haired boy greeted in what was the deadliest voice possible. And I'm Moegi, the most beautiful kunoichi in Konoha. The orange-haired girl said in a bubbly voice. Naruto smiled. God, how innocent these kids are. What's the point of a ninja playing ninja? A voice that sounded detached came. All of them turned to look at Sakura, who looked like someone had just told her Sasuke was gay. Naruto's expression became his usual bored, indifferent look. Sakura, what are you doing here? Before Sakura could reply, Konohamaru Naruto with a sly look. Hey boss. She's your, right? He asked holding up a pinky with a smirk. Naruto chuckled. No Konohamaru, she's just my teammate. That seemed to fire up Konohamaru even more, just what I expected from my rival. Her forehead is huge and her chest as flat as a board. Naruto's head snapped to Sakura to see her reaction. Konohamaru might as well have signed his death. Sakura's mood did a full 180 after hearing the kid wearing the blue scarf. She got a menacing look on her face and cracked her knuckles, clearly saying, you are dead. Naruto pushed Konohamaru. Run kid. I'll meet you later. Konohamaru needed to more pushing as he ran in the opposite direction with his friends, screaming in horror. Naruto shook his head and made to follow him, ignoring Kurama's chuckles. That kid has a lot to learn, he thought as he made a shadow clone who took after Konohamaru while he took a different path. If he was fast enough, his little rival wouldn't have bumps in his head. He kept his sensing active to track Sakura's signature and made his turns such that he would meet them in the opposite direction. What he did not expect was face the back of 2 shinobi his age, one boy and a girl, the boy holding up Konohamaru who was terrified. That's not good, he thought as he perfectly switched with his clone, and that was when he got a good look at the foreigners. The one that held Konohamaru honestly looked like a cat, with how his headwear looked. He was wearing face paint of all things, black sandals, black shirt and black pants. The other one was the one who caught his attention in a way that no girl had caught before. He somehow couldn't stop staring at her. She was, by far, the most beautiful kunoichi he had ever laid his eyes on. She wore a single light purple-colored, off-the-shoulders garment that extended to halfway down her thighs, with a red sash tied around her waist. She wore a fishnet over her exposed shoulders, along with on her left thigh and right calf. She was also carrying a large fan on her back. She had her hair towed up in 4 ponytails, with a rather developed chest for her age, which he guessed was a year higher than them, curves in all the right places, slightly tanned skin, sandy blonde hair and alluring teal eyes. Temari noticed the blonde boy staring at her and couldn't help the slight blush that came onto her age. He was pretty tall, easily a bit above 5 feet and obviously well built if how his clothes fit him were anything to go by. His hair, to her pleasant surprise, was a very golden shade of blonde, bordering on yellow. She looked at his eyes and her blush darkened a bit. His eyes were the most beautiful azures she had ever seen, staring at her with curiosity and something else she couldn't identify, but it gave her a warm feeling. She shook her head and focused on her brother, who was glaring at the kid with annoyance. That hurt, you damn brat. He was clearly pissed off. Naruto decided that now was the time to intervene and with a hidden signal to his clone, spoke up, you might want to put him down, Kabuki boy. That only seemed to piss him off even more. Yeah. What if I don't? He then froze, getting the unmistakable feeling of a kunai on his neck. I don't need to say it, right? Temari looked with wide eyes as the blonde who was standing before them had somehow made a clone who was holding a kunai to her brother's neck. And they hadn't even seen him move. He's good, she thought as she saw Kankuro grudgingly release the boy, who ran and hid behind the blonde's legs. A second later, a pebble hit his hand, which he clutched in pain and cried out, who did that? Naruto couldn't help the sigh that came out. Didn't he say he was going to train? He had already sensed Sasuke, who was standing on the branch of the tree behind him, bouncing a pebble in his hands with a superior look on his face. Interestingly, he also sensed another guy, who was giving off a very malicious feeling and oozing off killing intent like nobody's business. Deciding to address it later, he turned his attention back to in front of him. Sasuke-kun. Sakura shrieked. Naruto rubbed his ringing ears at the terrible soprano. Temari looked at Sasuke. He's cute, but he's nowhere as handsome as the blonde, she smirked, eyes turning back to check Naruto out. Kankuro snarled and made to grab the package on his back, which Naruto deduced to be a puppet judging from their sand headbands and the fact that Suna is known for puppets, when he decided to intervene. Temari asked, you're going to use Karasu, Kankuro? Wait. His sudden exclamation momentarily stopped the sand shinobi momentarily. He pointed to the tree behind him. I just wanted to know if the guy standing behind my teammate is with you or not. Both of their eyes widened along with Sasuke's, who whipped around to see a redhead standing upside down on a branch behind him. He had a kanji for love on his forehead, teal eyes with black rings around his eyes, giving him an appearance like a tanuki, and he was carrying a gourd on his back. He disappeared in a whirl of sand and reappeared by the side of the puppet kid. Kankuro, stop it. We're not here to cause trouble. Stop embarrassing our village, he spoke in a voice so cold that even Naruto shivered. However, the reactions of the sand shinobi were even more scared. Kankuro stammered out an apology, Gaara. They started it. Shut up, or I'll kill you, Gaara said in his deadly voice. Kankuro shut up immediately. Gaara turned to the Konoha shinobi, apologies to you guys. They made to walk off when Sasuke jumped in front of Naruto and demanded in an arrogant voice, you there? What's your name? Pointing to Gaara. All three of them turned, with Gaara speaking, Sabaku no Gaara. What's yours? Sasuke gave off a challenging smirk, Uchiha Sasuke. I wasn't talking to you, Gaara said monotonously, eyes turning to Naruto, who straightened up. Uzumaki Naruto, he said in a strong voice. Eyes shifting to Temari, he smiled and asked, what's yours? Temari smiled in return, Sabaku no Temari, nice to meet you. They looked into each other's eyes and kept staring, neither wanting to look away. Unfortunately, Sakura chose this moment to speak up. Listen, although Konoha and Suna are allies, our treaty prevents shinobi from entering each other's villages without permission. State your purpose. Naruto simply looked on, his face not betraying anything. Temari spoke up, holding up her passport. As you can see, we're genin of Sunagaku no Sato, K's no Kuni. We've come to this village to take part in the Chunin exams. She gave a mocking smile to her. Don't you know, being the genin of the host village. Naruto gave a shake of head from behind Sakura, clearly mouthing, our sensei hasn't informed us yet, Temari. Temari had thankfully seen him and received his message, giving him a nod. The three Sand siblings then turned and walked away, leaving Team 7 with Konohamaru and his friends. You all should already know why people from other villages are here, the Hokage addressed the assembly of Jonin and Chunin. Kakashi spoke up, is it that time of the year already, Hokage-sama? Asuma replied to him, I believe so. I have already seen a few shinobi the age of our genin in our village. Kurenai spoke up. When is it, Hokage-sama? 7 days from now, Kurenai-chan. Now, will all the Jonin step forward who are in charge of the newest batch of genin? Asuma, Kakashi and Kurenai stepped forward. Hiruzen gave them a contemplative stare and asked, "Do you wish to enter any of your genin in the exams?" Kakashi spoke up. "From the squad that I lead, Team 7, I recommend Uzumaki Naruto, Uchiha Sasuke and Haruna Sakura to the Chunin selection exams under the name, Hitaki Kakashi." Asuma spoke next. "From the squad that I lead, Team 10, I recommend Nara Shikamaru, Akamichi Choji and Yamanaka Ino to the Chunin selection exams under the name, Sarutobi Asuma." Kurenai was the last. "From the squad that I lead, Team 8, I recommend Hyuga Hinata, Inazuka Kiba and Aburame Shino to the Chunin selection exams under the name, Uehi Kurenai." The crowd behind them erupted into murmurs. All three of them nominated their teams. All the genin being entered are fresh rookies. It's been so long since rookies have been entered in the Chunin exams. Iruka, who had been standing in the back and watching his former students, who were not even 1 year into their career, get nominated for the Chunin exams, could hold it anymore. "Please wait, Hokage-sama. Permission to speak." Hiruzen gave him a silent nod to continue. Iruka then spoke frantically. "Excuse me for saying this, but your 9 students were once my students in the academy. They need more experience before they enter the Chunin exams." Kakashi knew that Iruka was worried about Naruto, but he was now Kakashi's student, not Iruka's. So he spoke up in a serious tone that betrayed his lazy posture. "I became a Chunin when I was 6 years younger than Naruto." Iruka's comeback was spot on. "Don't compare Naruto to yourself, Kakashi. He is different." Kakashi knew that Naruto could easily ace the exams, but he addressed the issue that was common among all genin. The genin are starting to believe that a shinobi's life is easy. Putting them in dangerous situations might set them straight. Iruka began speaking. "But they are not your students anymore, Iruka-sensei. They are my subordinates now, and as such, I am the one who will make such decisions for them," he sternly reminded the gentle Chunin-sensei. Hiruzen spoke to the defeated Iruka. "Iruka, I see where you are coming from." Iruka lightened up a bit, "which is why the rookies will be put through a special preliminary round." Dismissed. As soon as the siblings left, Naruto bade a hasty goodbye to Konohamaru and shunshined out of there straight to training ground 6. That team, he noted, doesn't train much, so they wouldn't mind him using their training ground. As he created a few shadow clones for sparring, Kurama briefly brought him into his mindscape. "Naruto, do you know why that boy felt so familiar to you?" he asked, tails swaying behind him as he looked at Naruto. Naruto folded his arms. "Good to know that it wasn't just me then. I believe that he is another Jinchuriki." Kurama nodded. "Exactly. But be on guard, his Biju is dangerous, and because of who is inside him, it's possible that the boy is completely mad." Naruto tilted his head curiously. It's not every day that the 9-tailed fox says someone is powerful. Just who is inside him, Kurama? The 1-tailed raccoon, Shukaku. He is the weakest of the tailed beasts, and batshit insane. He said it with a serious face, at which Naruto would have laughed if not for the fact that he realized that another Jinchuriki is roaming unchecked in Konoha. Jinchuriki, according to the stuff he has read up until now, are usually sent into other villages so they can burn or crush it into the ground. And he didn't see any person with Gaara who was in charge of him. Kankuro and Temari certainly couldn't control him, evidenced by how much afraid they are of him. Kurama continued, "You noticed the black rings around his eyes. It means that he hasn't slept in years, probably." Naruto went wide-eyed at that. "What the hell?" Kurama nodded in complete seriousness. "Suna doesn't have any great seal masters, so the seal on that Jinchuriki is quite loose, compared to yours. If the host falls asleep, Shukaku will take control and come out. Best be on guard, because he already got you in his sights, no doubt from sensing my presence within you." Naruto agreed. "Thanks for the warning, Kurama. I'll keep it in mind." With that, he exited his mindscape and focused on the defending exercise. As he blocked and dodged every strike from his clones, he hoped that Kakashi would enter them in the Chunin exams. Then another thought came to his mind, more specifically, a person. He smiled wistfully as he punched a clone in the ribs, dispelling it. He had never seen such a beautiful girl ever before. Then again, there weren't many girls of his age in Konoha, and Ino and Sakura didn't count. He knew from the day he saw them that he wouldn't be liking them anytime soon. Temari was different, however, and in a good way. Her looks were quite exotic, especially her eyes. He had never seen eyes of that color, and he had to admit, it was quite easy getting lost in them for him. He knew, from his own observations, that his own eye color was one of a kind in all of Konoha. Her being a blonde like him was only a plus point in his eyes. From what he had observed and could tell, she and the two other shinobi were siblings, with Temari being the oldest. It was pretty easy to reach that conclusion. Temari and Gaara shared the same eyes and facial shape, but Temari shared the shape of her eyes with Konkuro, not to mention the way she acted with him. Very much like an older sister who was used to bashing her brother's head but didn't because they were in public. And that smirk, oh Kami. He could say with full certainty that it was the smirk he had seen among the girls of his age, which was quite ironic seeing he created the jutsu. Her smile was not far behind, though it could easily beat her smirk when coupled with the very pretty blush that came over her face while she was looking at him. He could not wait to see her again. Team 7 was standing on the bridge and as usual, waiting for their tardy mess of a sensei. It had been almost 3 hours, when Sakura finally cracked. With a scream of frustration that no doubt scared the birds resting a mile away, she ranted, "Arg. Why does Kakashi-sensei always make us wait when he's the one who always calls us?" She began ranting about she had woken up late and hadn't had the chance to blow dry her hair. Naruto and Sasuke glanced at each other, sharing a look of shared suffering. While Naruto had just turned up 20 minutes ago, he still couldn't bear Sakura's incessant nonsense. Why the hell does she have to be so damn loud every time? Was the thought that went through the boys' heads. Naruto finally sensed Kakashi's presence heading their way and straightened up. Sasuke, who had learned to read Naruto's body language after a while, straightened up as well, knowing that his teammate had sensed someone coming their way. True enough, there was a puff of smoke, which turned out to be Kakashi. Waving a hand at them, he had the nerve to cheerfully excuse himself, "Hello there. I got lost on the road of life today." "Only someone like you could get lost on a one-way road," Naruto grumbled, hands in his pockets and giving Kakashi a deadpan look. Quote, "I'll pretend you didn't say that and get to the point." He held up 3 application tickets. "I nominated you 3 for the Chunin selection exams. You are not forced to take it, however. You have a choice whether to take part in it or not." How he managed to say in his ever-lazy tone of voice and still sound serious was beyond Naruto's understanding. Must be innate talent, he mused. Though if you do decide to take them, go to the academy in 6 days at 3 in the afternoon, room 301, he added. They were dismissed after that. Naruto suggested that they get lunch together, after which they can go their separate ways to train. While they were walking to Ichiraku Ramen, Naruto noticed that Sakura looked quite uncertain, which matched the feeling of her chakra. "Something bothering you, Sakura?" Sakura blinked and looked at Naruto, a nervous smile appearing in her face. "And no, Naruto. Everything's fine." Sasuke too noticed her behavior, but kept quiet. As long as she was ready for the Chunin exams, it was fine. Naruto, on the other hand, had doubts. He knew that Chunin exams were no joke. Ninja from all the villages participated and at times, death happened. He would be scared too, if he didn't train his off every day. "Hope this exam teaches you a lesson, Sakura. The world of shinobi is not a place for fangirls," he grimly thought to himself. They went into the bar and were greeted by Kyuki with a warm grin. "Oh, Naruto and his team. Come and have a seat." Naruto grinned. Old man Kyuki never failed to bring a smile on his face. His amusement grew when he heard Sasuke mutter, "Stop saying it like he is the leader of this team." As they sat down on the stools, Kyuki asked for orders. Naruto was the first to speak. "I'll have 2 miso ramen, please." Sakura spoke next. 1 Tariniki ramen, please." Sasuke was the last. "I'll have a tonkatsu ramen, thank you." Naruto envied the way Sasuke ordered his food. The arrogance came so natural to him. Naruto wished that he could do it as well. He turned to Sakura, who looked worried about something. Come to think of it, she has been acting strange ever since the topic of Chunin exams came up, he thought. It's not that strange for weaklings to feel this way when they are faced with the unknown, Kurama offered his view. Naruto rolled his eyes and ignored the comment, though he didn't deny it either. So, he decided to talk to her. Speaking in a low tone, he asked her, Sakura, how do you feel about the Chunin exams? Sakura was startled when he suddenly spoke to her. Calming down herself, she was about to tell him to mind his own business when she met his eyes. So full of sincerity, and he seemed to genuinely want to listen to her. She hesitated, not sure of how she should say it. It's kind of scary, you know. Right now, I know that I'm not ready, but when will I know that I am? Her thoughts were very much jumbled up right now to be phrased properly. Naruto said nothing until their order arrived. He separated his sticks and as he waited for it to cool a bit, he spoke, I won't sugarcoat my words Sakura, but you haven't trained seriously since the academy and even then, you probably did the bare minimum of what the instructors told to do, didn't you? Her silence and shameful expression told him that his deduction was spot on. A side glance also told him that Sasuke was eating his food quietly, not paying any attention to them. But that did not fool Naruto, who smirked when he observed Sasuke's body was tilted towards their side. He continued, ever since the academy and even after when our team was formed, you kept neglecting your training in favor of pining after Sasuke, even going on a diet in the process. He didn't stop eating his food at all, looking as if talking about the weather. Sakura felt like she wanted to find a hole and climb into it and never come out. She wanted so badly to tell Naruto to shut up, but bitter truth in his words stopped her from doing it. She would be lying to herself that she did not know what Naruto was talking about. Naruto kept a careful eye on the pink-haired girl. Now that she had seen her situation laid bare in front of her instead of being buried deep inside her mind, it was time to let her know of the consequences. Now look at yourself. You don't have the physique required for a strong kunoichi, your neglect of training means you have no grasp of the basic skills to improve further upon them. Your weapon throwing is mediocre at best. All you have is excellent chakra control, but let's face it, you aren't the only one who does. Kakashi-sensei said that you are a genjutsu type, but you don't know any genjutsu, nor can you dispel one, as proven in the Bell test. In short, one hit is all what anyone needs to take you out. He finished his meal and was now looking straight at her. He won't stop now. Sakura needed to hear this. It was time she faced the facts. Sakura was barely keeping from bursting out in tears. Everything Naruto said was true, and while she hated to admit it, the facts made her sound pathetic. Ever since the academy, she had only increased her efforts in impressing Sasuke instead of bettering herself. She had repeatedly told herself that Sasuke would save her whenever she would be in danger. Her being with Sasuke on the same team only reinforced that belief. But in the C rank turned A rank, she felt for the first time that she was the one who was utterly useless on their team. What was worse was that she did not do anything to change it after returning, still hoping to get together with Sasuke. Oh, one hit. Am I really that pathetic and useless? She knew the answer to that question. While she did have some natural strength, it was useless to her if she did not know how to use it. Naruto and Sasuke were strong too, but what made them strong that they had the strength to take a hit and get back up, only to dish it back with even greater ferocity. Sakura could dish it out, and even that was questionable, but couldn't take the punishment. She couldn't take a punch to her gut and have the strength to get up. Naruto had been quietly watching Sakura, and he had to say, the girl looked just one more truth away from bursting into tears. He had, while Sakura was wallowing in guilt, quietly motioned Sasuke to leave. The dark-haired boy had looked outraged that Naruto was waving him away like a servant and had almost tore into him when he saw the serious and somber look in his eyes. Naruto had mouthed to him that Sakura would be heartbroken if she were to learn that Sasuke saw her in her moment of weakness. So he quietly finished his food and went outside, leaning against the wall and waiting for them. Now that the tough part of learning about the consequences was over, it was time for some motivation. He changed the topic of the conversation. Idly spinning the chopsticks between his fingers, he said, I saw Team 10 the other day. He quietly cheered when he saw the tiny spark of interest in her eyes. On Team 10 was Sakura's rival, Ino. Oh, yeah, and Ino challenged me to a spar. Can you believe that? He gave an amused shake of his head. Sakura, too, gave a small chuckle at that. Ino had no chance of defeating Naruto when Sasuke had trouble just trying to match him. She was a bit less pathetic than you, but pathetic all the same. Isn't she your rival, Sakura? By now, she found it easier to concentrate on the conversation than her guilt. Yes, she is. Naruto adopted a look of confusion. Then why are you not trying to beat her? You don't want to lose Sasuke to her, right? That did catch her attention, because her eyes now held a little panic. What do you mean by losing Sasuke? Naruto debated whether to tell her or not. This was the true key to motivating a person with a rival. Bring a common goal in between them. Ino and Sakura were still competing for Sasuke's attention, which was the perfect way for him to take advantage and motivate her. He fully turned to face her. You might not know this, but Sasuke's the last Uchiha alive who is still loyal to Konoha, and as such, he has to repopulate his clan. You know what that means, right? He gave her a pointed look. A dark blush came over her face, but she nodded. She couldn't believe how Naruto could talk about it without feeling the least bit awkward. She didn't know that he did, but he just hid his awkwardness better than others. Naruto continued, to do it, he will need strong women in the future. It all comes down to this. If you don't get strong enough, he will pick Ino over you and you will be left behind. The desired effect was achieved when he saw a fire light up in her eyes. Yep, she definitely couldn't stand losing to Ino. Oh, he almost forgot. One more thing. The answer to your question. You won't. There is no one to tell you that you are ready. It's a leap of faith. He got up and put some money on the counter. That's all it is, Sakura. A leap of faith, he softly finished. Just before he left, he saw something he had definitely not seen in her eyes ever before. Fierce determination. Unknown to the team, Ayame and Tyuki were quietly listening in on their conversation. By the end of it, Ayame looked amazed at the way Naruto had successfully managed to motivate her. He was born to be a leader. I know it, she thought with a smile. Tyuki was smiling like he was the proudest man in the world. He had been attending to Naruto for years and he always knew that Naruto was destined for great things. After witnessing firsthand Naruto's motivational speech, it only reinforced what he already knew. Naruto, you will become a great, no, the greatest Hokage this village has ever seen. Walking out, he immediately silenced Sasuke, who opened his mouth, no doubt to rant at him for bringing him into this, and motioned him to follow him. They jumped onto the opposite rooftop and crouched. What are we waiting for? Sasuke whispered. Just watch, Naruto said, pointing to the ramen bar. A few moments later, Sakura walked out and Sasuke could definitely see that she was different. Her fangirl was still visible in her eyes, but was now overshadowed by a fierce look of determination. He watched, amazed that she did not even seem to look for him, instead, turning around and heading towards the training grounds. He turned to his blonde comrade, who was watching Sakura go away with a smile and no small amount of self-satisfaction. What did you do? Hell, even his voice was filled with stupefaction. Naruto gave an innocent shrug, the smile still on his face. Nothing, just pointed her in the direction of success. He left after that, leaving a speechless Sasuke behind. Naruto was just roaming around the training grounds, having finished his training 15 minutes ago. He felt really good after motivating Sakura to become stronger today. Just as he was turning to leave, he sensed it. 3 chakra signatures, 200 meters away. One was average, other a bit above average, and the last, which was faintly familiar, only a bit above a civilian's. He had already sent a few clones home to prepare dinner, and since there was still time, why not train his stealth skills a bit? He jogged on his toes, cautious not to make any sound. When he was just 50 meters away, he stopped and made a half-ram seal. A puff of smoke later, a small, light brown fox was standing in his place. Lowering his chakra signature by a significant margin, he moved forward. This should allow me to get close, he thought as he hid 2 trees away from the chakra signatures. You heard. The upcoming Chunin exams will have rookies for the first time in 5 years. The fox's eyes narrowed. I know that voice. It's Rock Lee, the kid I met during one of my morning rounds. No way. The Jonins must be trying to look good, another voice joined in. This one held confidence, bordering on overconfidence. Lee spoke again. 3 of them are from Kakashi's unit as well, you know. The last voice finally spoke. But unlike the previous 2, this held a sort of arrogance not unlike Sasuke's. That's interesting. Either way, The girl spoke, who Naruto finally identified as Tenten from the Higurashi weapons shop. That's quite pitiful for them. The arrogant voice spoke as if he already knew who was going to win. Naruto decided that was enough and turned to go back, but he cursed when he stepped on a twig. He could not even sense, since he would be molding chakra and alerting them was the last thing he wanted to do. Don't worry, the arrogant one spoke, it's just a fox. Naruto inwardly sighed in relief and ran away and did not turn back into himself until he was out of the training grounds. The thought didn't cross his mind that how did he know that it was only a fox. One thing is for sure. These Chunin exams will definitely be interesting. 6 days passed and it was the day of the Chunin exams. Sasuke and Naruto had arrived at the academy, and Naruto could tell, Sasuke was fired up like anything. The only one left to arrive was Sakura. They were simply waiting outside the gates when Sakura arrived. And there was something visibly different about her. She looked like usual, but her posture had a confidence that both of them hadn't seen before. Naruto looked into her eyes and smiled at what he saw. Resolve. Resolve to see this through, and she didn't look the least bit uncertain. Good morning, Naruto. Sasuke-kun, she greeted. Sasuke, for his part, hid his surprise just barely. Whenever she greeted him, she did like a fangirl. Now, she looked just like a determined kunoichi. Good morning, Sakura. Naruto greeted with a nod. Sasuke just gave his customary grunt. Let's stop wasting time in greetings and go, he ordered curtly, striding inside without even waiting for them. Sakura gave an amused look to Naruto, who just shrugged in a way that said, what can you do? They caught up to him and ascended the stairs, silently and focused. The sound of a crowd caught their attention and they went to investigate. Upon arriving at the scene, they stared in surprise at the large crowd. What the hell was going on? Then Naruto sensed the genjutsu over the whole corridor and narrowed his eyes. In front of them were 2 guards who looked suspiciously familiar. Naruto narrowed his eyes at them and it suddenly came to him, causing him to resist a facepalm. Who were Izumo and Katetsu trying to fool with that obvious henge? Sasuke nudged Sakura. This is only the 2nd floor, isn't it? Sakura looked at him in surprise. Sasuke never, ever talked to her so actively. She looked at Naruto, who gave her a thumbs up. She turned to Sasuke and spoke confidently. Hi, since we've only climbed 2 floors. This is obviously a genjutsu. Sasuke then nodded to himself and started walking to the crowd, mostly to show off by proclaiming that a genjutsu of this caliber does not fool him. But a hand to his shoulder caused him to turn around and glare at Naruto, who was shaking his head. The people over there still haven't noticed that they are still just on the 2nd floor, he said softly. This is probably a test designed to weed out the weaklings, so let's just slip by, nice and quiet, he suggested. Sasuke found that this was becoming quite frequent. Him going off to do something, Naruto stopping him and giving a suggestion, Sasuke agreeing, albeit grudgingly, that the suggestion was better and following Naruto. Even now, Naruto's suggestion was strategically better. Reducing the competition meant their chance of winning was higher. To be completely honest, Sasuke was jealous of Naruto. He was jealous of his strength, his skills, his natural charisma, the way that leadership seemed to fit with him like a glove, how it came to him so naturally. Obviously, his own desire to be at the top and be leader clashed with Naruto's. He could not stand to remain second best, especially to Naruto of all people. Clenching his fists in his pockets, he nodded and as one, quietly slipped through the crowd and took the stairs to the 3rd floor. As they were heading to 301, a voice came from above them. Hey, you, the one with the dark eyes. Please wait. They all turned and looked above to see a kid wearing a tight, green jumpsuit and orange leg warmers. His black hair had a bowl cut style and he had amazingly thick eyebrows. He was looking at Sasuke. Naruto rose an eyebrow at him. What is Lee playing at? Lee jumped down to their level and it was only then he recognized Naruto. He gave off a blinding grin. Naruto-kun. What a youthful surprise to see you here. Sakura and Sasuke gave Naruto mildly horrified looks. They didn't know that Naruto knew this weirdo. As for Naruto, he just took a page from Kakashi's book and gave a lazy wave in a lazy voice. Yo. It turned out be the wrong thing to say, as Lee cried out while shaking a fist. What hip and cool attitude. Your flames of youth seem to have diminished since the last time we met. Naruto shrugged and decided to intervene in case Lee takes off on a tangent. So Lee, why did you stop us? Lee suddenly sobered and turned to Sasuke. Sorry, I got distracted. My name is Rock Lee, and I wish to challenge this year's prodigy, Uchiha Sasuke, to a fight. Sasuke replied back coldly, and why should I give you the time? He gave a once-over and found him lacking any sort of strength whatsoever. He, however, didn't like the way Lee called him a prodigy. A prodigy should stand out of a crowd, and the title felt cheap because Naruto was stronger than him. Lee smiled. I am the strongest Konoha genin right now. A test for myself, and to see if you're as good as everyone says you are. Sasuke smirked, causing Naruto to sigh in resignation. Just a mention of a fight was enough to get Sasuke's blood pumping. 10 minutes later, he found himself looking at a beat-up Sasuke and wondered if it was a mistake or did Sasuke deliberately underestimate Lee. Judging from appearance, Lee was nothing special. But apparently, Sasuke had never heard the phrase, appearances can be deceiving. Lee had absolutely dominated the fight, even when Sasuke had activated his Sharingan. All throughout the fight, Sasuke had been trying to just find Lee, because he was unbelievably fast. Of course, Naruto had easily followed Lee's movements, because he himself had surpassed that speed with his resistance seals activated at level 11 long ago. He closely observed that even when Sasuke had just begun to react fast enough, he was smashed by Lee's superior taijutsu skills and pure speed. Just when Lee was about to end the fight, it was ended by a talking turtle of all people. Lee, that technique is forbidden. He yelled at him. Lee bowed his head in apology. I'm sorry, I got carried away. The turtle glared at Lee, causing him to flinch. But I wasn't planning to use the R reverse version. Baka. The turtle exclaimed, causing Lee to flinch again. You think that excuse will work? You should know what it means for a shinobi to expose his move. While the turtle was busy reprimanding Lee, Naruto glanced over to see if Sasuke was alright, but he wished he hadn't. Sasuke had a look of absolute loathing on his face as he glared at Lee and the turtle. I lost to that weirdo. He looked over to Sakura and saw that she was still shocked at the pure speed that Lee displayed. Looking over to Naruto, he resisted the urge to roar in rage. Naruto was looking bored, just as he was before the fight. There was not a single trace of alarm or fear that Sasuke could see. Which meant only one thing. Naruto was certain, no, absolutely confident that he could take on Lee and win. Just how strong is he? He doesn't look alarmed in the least. That means he knows he is stronger and faster than the weirdo. He knows he could counter Lee's every move, whereas I couldn't even follow that guy. Is Naruto even in the same league as the rest of the genin? How can I, with the Sharingan, still not match up to him? Were the thoughts rushing through his head. He hated being weaker than anyone. He turned his attention back to the turtle, who said, Gai-sensei will take care of your punishment. An explosion of smoke erupted on the turtle's back, and when it cleared, an adult version of Rock Lee was seen standing in a ridiculous pose. Geez, you guys are the epitome of the springtime of youth. To say Team 7 was freaked out was an understatement. They were shell-shocked at his appearance. Even Naruto was looking a bit alarmed, with Kurama screaming in his mind to make it stop. If Lee were just a few years older, no one would be able to tell the difference between him and Guy. Lee, you fool. Guy shouted at him, punching him in the jaw so hard that Lee flew back. Lee quickly recovered, though. Guy then proclaimed, for breaking the rule and fighting before the exam, you must complete 500 laps around Konoha before sundown. The whole of Team 7 gaped at the absurdity of the challenge, believing it to be nothing more than a joke. However, they were further shocked into disbelief at Lee's reply. Hi Gai-sensei. Lee's eyes were burning at the challenge. Probably at how much youthful it was, Naruto mused. Naruto decided to intervene before even more weirdness took place. Excuse me, but don't you think that you should focus on the Chunin exams right now? Gai-sensei turned to them for the first time, looking a bit sheepish. Oh, my bad. Turning to Lee, he coughed in his hand and said, Lee, you will fulfill your punishment after the Chunin exams, got it? Lee stood at attention. Hi, Gai-sensei. Guy then turned to the other team. Ah, so you guys are from Kakashi's team. Sasuke rose an eyebrow condescendingly. You know Kakashi. Guy chuckled as he rubbed his chin. Kakashi and I are eternal rivals. I am leading currently, with my 50 wins to Kakashi's 49. The whole Team 7 sweat dropped at that. Lee jumped in. Isn't Guy-sensei the greatest? Sasuke was studying Guy intensely, looking at the empty space. Wait, what? He and Sakura suddenly turned around to face Guy, who had gotten behind them so fast that not even a blur was visible. But Naruto showed no signs of surprise, having followed him with his eyes. Guy had only used low Jonin level speed right now. He knew that Guy had barely put effort in getting that fast to get behind them. While he could do it as well if he took his seals off for now, he would be destroyed in a contest of speed if Guy went full speed. There was only so much speed his 12-year body could go at before reaching a limit. Sasuke was looking at Guy with wide eyes along with Sakura. This guy, he's definitely faster than Kakashi. He thought with a grimace. Rage filled him once more. Damn it. How many people are there that I have to surpass to become capable of defeating him? Anyways, you guys should head to the room. Your exam is to begin soon. Good luck. Turning to Lee, he flashed a grin and a thumbs up. Do your best, Lee. Bask in the springtime of youth. He disappeared after that. Lee began to wrap his bandages up, but just before he left, he turned to Sasuke. Sasuke-kun, I apologize for lying before. I am not the strongest Konoha genin, it is my teammate. I entered this exam to defeat him, and you are one of my targets as well. Please prepare yourself, and I wish you all the best. After Lee finally walked away, Naruto carefully observed Sasuke. His fists were clenched tight, along with gritted teeth and a look of frustration and rage on his face. Naruto clenched his own fists and raged in his mind. Who does he think he is? Why does he keep thinking that he is the only one who is strong and the rest are weak? He kept his face carefully neutral as he faced Sasuke. What's wrong, Sasuke? He was careful to keep his voice level. He didn't even flinch when Sasuke faced him, a look of barely contained rage on his face. Shut up. I'll slaughter him next time. He promised. Naruto only rose an eyebrow. We are in the middle of an exam, which means there is little time. Sorry, no time for you to get better than him. Maybe after the exams, but not now. And why were you so angry and frustrated before? Is it so hard to accept that there are people of our age who are stronger and faster than you? Sasuke opened his mouth to tell Naruto to mind his own business, but nothing came out. He realized with a growl that what Naruto had said was true. He was brought up with the teachings from his father that the Uchiha are the greatest, and he learned it all with pride. So it was hard for his pride to accept that there is someone who is stronger, faster than him. Ever since the massacre, he had trained his hardest every day, trying to bridge the power gap between him and him, just so he could have his revenge. He thought that he had at least become stronger than his peers, only to find out how thoroughly outclassed he was among those of his own age. Naruto shook his head. One day, Sasuke's superiority complex is gonna blow up in his face. Sasuke was too proud of himself, believing his power was better than others and no one could match him. But pride always had its downfall, and it didn't look like Sasuke's gonna learn that lesson anytime soon. Anyway, we should get going. We don't want to be late for the exam, Naruto said as he took the lead, with Sakura following him after giving a concerned glance to Sasuke, who followed the last. They reached the room, only to see Kakashi leaning against the wall with his head buried in his. Kakashi looked at them and closed his book, putting his hands in his pockets. He gave them a critical look. Sakura decided to come as well. I see. Naruto frowned at his statement. What do you mean by that? His voice held a hard edge now, warning Kakashi that he better not play with the answers right now. Kakashi, for his part, didn't take offense at Naruto's tone at all. Instead, he mentally approved of how Naruto spoke. It was clear that he was in the zone, ready to tackle a challenge. He had taken on a mindset of a serious shinobi now, mentally prepared for the challenges to come. He was also surprised at the lack of uncertainty in Sakura, which he had seen on the day he had given out the Chunin forms. Something had happened in between, but whatever it was, he was glad for it. A mild feeling of disappointment went through him when he saw Sasuke's state. There were light bruises on his face, and he looked like someone had just trampled on his ego. He mentally shook his head. Sasuke was too impulsive when it came to his pride and ego. He could never take any defeat in stride. For all his skills, Sasuke's mix of having both a superiority and an inferiority complex made him, in Kakashi's words, a sore loser. He shook these thoughts off and focused on answering Naruto. You are now, officially, registered to take the exams. To tell you the truth, Chunin exams can only be taken in teams of 3. So you lied that it is up to us whether we want to take part in it or not, Naruto stated, eyes narrowing. Kakashi nodded seriously. I did. I feared that if I hadn't, you two would have forced Sakura to take the exams with you. And if only they both had come here and not you, Sakura, I would have turned them away. He smiled, but I'm glad that you 3 came of your own free will, and as a team. Sakura, unnoticed by Kakashi, gave a small glance to Naruto and smiled. It's all thanks to you, Naruto. You washed away my uncertainty. Kakashi moved out of their way. Go on in, then. Do your best. They opened the door, and were surprised to see the number of genin taking the Chunin exams. And all of them were looking at them. Naruto put on his game face, which was a neutral scowl. He was internally scoffing at the pathetic amount of killing intent coming their way. He looked back to see that Sasuke was unaffected as well. Sakura too, if not for the slight bead of sweat on the side of her face. He turned back, absently wondering if he would see any of his peers. Sasuke-kun. Naruto flinched, and then sighed. Kami. He hated that voice. He turned around just in time to see a blonde missile, Ino hug Sasuke tightly from behind. It's been so long since I have seen you, Sasuke-kun. I miss your dark looks, you know. Sakura spoke in a surprisingly normal tone, but serious nonetheless. Let Sasuke-kun go, Ino pig. Ino glanced at Sakura, mocking her. I am surprised they let you compete, forehead. Sakura gained a tick mark, her voice getting a bit higher. You leave my forehead out of this. Ino just stuck her tongue out at Sakura. Naruto just rolled his eyes at the immature display. Oh, you guys are competing in this stupid test too. Shikamaru's voice came as he approached with Choji. Naruto smirked and lightly commented, I didn't think you had the energy to take this exam, Shika. The said boy sighed, it's troublesome, but Ino threatened us with our lives, so we had to. Finally found you guys. Naruto saw that it was Kiba's voice, who was coming with teammate in tow. Hinata blushed at the sight of Naruto. Well, it looks like all the rookies are assembled. Shikamaru sighed. Geez, you guys too. Kiba hummed. I wonder how far we will get, now that all of us are assembled. Sasuke. Sasuke smirked in return. You seem quite confident, Kiba. Kiba boasted. We trained a lot. We won't be losing to you. You guys should be quieter. You know, came a new voice from behind them. They all turned to see a bespectacled teenager with gray hair in a ponytail. He looked almost 17, and was wearing a Konoha Hitai 8. You guys are rookies just out of the academy, right? You shouldn't be fooling around like that, he said. Ino took offense to that. Who the hell are you to tell us that? I'm Yakushi Kabuto. And just take a look around you, he gently said, not seeming to mind her tone at all. All the rookies, except for Naruto and Sasuke, tensed up after looking around. They were the focal point of all the attention, and it wasn't the good kind. The team behind you is from Omegakure no Sato. They have short tempers, he explained. Naruto decided that he had enough of people trying to intimidate him and his team, so he turned the tables. He didn't exude any killing intent, but simply glared with his eyes. He was very much satisfied to see many of them flinch, and why shouldn't they? He had his father's eyes, and his father sent his enemies running in the opposite direction with just a look. These genin stood no chance. Kabuto-san, was it? Sakura's voice caused him to turn. Yes. Is this your second time taking these exams? No, actually it is my 7th, Kabuto admitted, sheepishly rubbing the back of his head. Wow, you must really suck then. Kiba's brashness surprised no one. Kabuto shrugged, conceding the point, or maybe the exams are just that hard. To help out, I thought I'd share some info on the other participants with my fellow Konoha nin. He withdrew a thick deck of cards from his weapons pouch. Who do you want to know about? Give me information on Sabaku no Gaara, Rock Lee and Uzumaki Naruto, Sasuke commanded, desperate for some information on his teammate and the others. The rookies gave him weird looks, but Naruto glared at Sasuke, who glared back. Finally, I get to see just how powerful you really are, Naruto. Kabuto smirked. You already know their names, which makes it less fun. Looking at his cards, he began reading. Sabaku no Gara. His team has completed 8 C rank and WoW, AB rank. It says he's come back from each of them without a scratch. A genin doing AB rank is highly unusual, but coming back from one without any injury is just unheard of. This caused all of them to tense up, even Naruto. Next is Rock Lee. Konoha genin with a tremendous skill in taijutsu. His skills in ninjutsu and genjutsu are nil. He is a member of Team 9 led by Maeda Guy as his sensei. His teammates are Hyuga Neji and Higurashi Tenten. He has completed 42 D ranks and 37 C ranks. He has been a genin for a year more than you guys. Next is Uzumaki Naruto, he said, pulling another card. Though he blinked in surprise when it suddenly disappeared from his hands. Looking up, he saw Naruto holding the card between 2 fingers. Sasuke growled and went to snatch the card from him, but Naruto playfully put it out of reach, though there was a dangerous glint in his eyes. Sorry Sasuke, Kabuto-san, but I don't like my cards to be displayed until the end of the game. He clapped the card between his hands, and when he separated them, only small pieces of the card fell out. His eyes then narrowed as he looked at Kabuto. You really shouldn't give out information like that, Kabuto-san. It may come to bite you back one day. On the inside, he was trying to figure Kabuto out. Just who was this guy? Getting information on Lee wouldn't be so hard, but how did he acquire the mission stats of a foreign nin, who is also a Jinchuriki, when they can only be accessed by the Kazekage and his council? It's obvious that he knows way too much to be a genin. And why am I getting the feeling of snakes from this guy? I have to inform Gigi of this somehow. That type of information opens up the possibility that he is a spy. Kabuto held his hands up in surrender. I meant no harm, Naruto-kun. I just like to gather information is all. Naruto didn't look convinced but gave it a rest. Kabuto thought, guess I won't be making his job any harder. His master would be so disappointed. Naruto's senses spiked and he caught a movement in the corner of his eyes. He saw a ninja with a headband having a musical note flying through the air, throwing 2 kunai into the floor in front of Kabuto, who jumped back just in time for another one with the same headband, but had his head covered in bandages, to appear in front of him and taking a swing at Kabuto. Kabuto dodged, smirking, but his glasses suddenly shattered and he collapsed onto his knees, throwing up. 3 nin, 2 boys and 1 girl, stood in front of Kabuto, radiating killing intent. Pathetic. The bandaged one scoffed. Aren't you supposed to be a 4-year-old veteran? Meanwhile, Naruto was trying to figure out what just happened. If nothing hit Kabuto, why did his glasses shatter and why the hell did he throw up? Was it pressurized air? Kurama scowled and spoke from within. Think Naruto. What is the symbol on his Hitai-8? Naruto frowned. It's a musical note. Kurama prompted him further. Music is a form of sound, and how does sound travel? Naruto replied. Through the medium of air. Oh, he smirked. He manipulated the sound waves to target the ear and throw off his balance. He shook his head. Foolish guy. He just gave away his main attack. Naruto turned to see the spiky-haired ninja talking. Write this down on your cards. 3 Otogakur ninjas, definite future Chunin. An explosion of smoke went down in front of the class and a voice was heard. When the smoke cleared, there was a large man wearing a black trench coat, black fingerless gloves and a bandana was standing. His intimidating stature and harsh tone that followed ensured that his words were heeded quickly. That is Morino Ibiki, if I'm not wrong. Konoha's top interrogator alongside Yamanaka Inoichi and Anko Sensei's superior, Naruto speculated. Alright you maggots. Shut the hell up and sit down in your assigned seats. The first part of the exam will begin now. Any fighting will lead straight to disqualification. Pointing to the Otogakur ninjas, he said, you better stop doing that if you don't want to fail before even the exam starts. He watched as everyone went to their assigned seats. Once everyone was settled, he began explaining the exam. This is an exam in which you start off with 10 points. There are 2 rules to this exam. The first rule. This is a team test. Whether you pass or not will be determined by the combined score of your teammates. Second rule. Anyone caught doing any sneaky activities, namely cheating, he smiled in a sinister way that sent shivers down many people's spines, will have 2 points taken off for every offense. You have 45 minutes. Begin. The sound of papers turning sounded for a brief moment. Naruto first inspected where his teammates were seated. To his disappointment, they were seated quite far. Turning his eyes on the test, he raised an eyebrow in disbelief. What type of questions are these? They are no genin level, that's for sure. Which means they want the genin to cheat. This exam is testing our information gathering. He gave an impressed smirk at that, but then frowned. I may have photographic memory, but it defeats the whole purpose of this test if I write what I know. What to do now? He scanned the room, looking for someone who was confidently filling out the answers at a high speed. He smirked when he saw one sitting in the column to his left, 2 rows above him. Got him. Now I just have to figure out how to learn his answers, or maybe, I can just switch our tests. He pondered for over 2 minutes on what to do, watching his peers cheat. Sasuke was copying answers with his Sharingan, Sakura was writing on her own since she knew the answers, Tenten had cleverly altered the ceiling flap to reflect someone's answers. Hinata was using her Byakugan, Shino was using his bugs to cheat, Kiba had Akamaru on top of his head, barking his answers to him. Shikamaru did not need to cheat, as he was already smart enough. Got it. First, he would have to scope out the field. He spent the next 5 minutes watching the invigilators walk, trying to find a pattern. Finally, he found a loophole. There were 4 columns of students, with all the columns separated. The first invigilator between the first 2 columns walked with the invigilator between the last 2. Ibiki walked in the center of the second and third columns, but he always moved opposite to the other 2 invigilators. So, there was a point where all 3 of them were in a row and then they went in the opposite direction of each other. There was a 3-second interval during which none of them were facing him. After that interval, the 3 of them would face the class from the respective ends. Which means, he had 3 seconds to make his plan work. Second, know the number of the desk from which he was going to cheat. The test paper didn't have a space to write their names, but a space where they had to write their desk number. So, he deduced that teams will be identified from the number of the desk they were sitting on. Every team had been given specific seats according to the seating plan next to the board. So when Ibiki comes across the papers from the desk numbers 8, 21 and 27, he would know he was looking at the papers of Team 7 according to the seating plan. Now that he knew what he needed to know, it was time to act. Counting from now, he discreetly pulled out 2 smoke bombs during the first interval under the pretense of scratching his back. Maybe it was a bit overkill, but he needed to remain unseen. He waited till the guy was finished writing. 5th interval was when shit hit the fan. As soon as the back of the invigilators were turned to him, he wasted no time and threw the smoke bombs onto the floor, one on the right and one on the left. Roars of anger and panic could be heard throughout the classroom as no one could see their tests. Windows were open to let the smoke out, and once it was cleared, several of them looked confused as nothing had happened to their tests. Naruto, however, was calmly pretending to keep writing on the sheet on which answers were already filled out. The guy whose sheet he stole had a panicked look on his face when he saw that the sheet in front of him had all the wrong answers written down. There was even a mocking note that said better luck next time. The worst thing was that the sheet in front of him had his desk number written on it. There wasn't enough time to erase and write the correct answers all over again. Yeah, Naruto was not above such petty things from time to time. Naruto calmly erased the desk number on the sheet he stole and wrote his own down. What had happened was when the smoke spread, Naruto had quickly created a shadow clone that had instantly transformed into a finger-sized version of himself. The clone had taken a hold of his sheet and substituted with the sheet of the guy Naruto had decided to cheat from. By the time smoke cleared, Naruto had already finished his job. Ibiki was slightly irritated at the ruckus caused. He held his hand up for silence. Anyone who has lost their sheet might as well get out with your team. Surprisingly, none of them moved to get up. Ibiki deduced that whoever had done that was only looking out for himself. Though I'm interested in learning just who exactly did that, he thought as his eyes swept around the room. His eyes looked at Naruto, who was simply leaned back in his chair, eyes up at the ceiling and an uncaring look on his face. His eyes narrowed the tiniest bit in suspicion. Naruto was well known for his successful pranks all around the village. Uzumaki Naruto, he doesn't look bothered in the least. He could be the one. His face etched back into his neutral expression. Then again, he hasn't looked the least bit bothered since the beginning of this test. And just like that, he lifted his suspicion off Naruto, continuing to watch the class closely. Uzumaki Pranking Code of Conduct. Rule 2. In the aftermath of a prank, throw suspicion off yourself in any way possible. At the end of 45 minutes, Ibiki looked at the clock on the wall and nodded to himself. He turned his head to the open door, through which Kakuro, who had gone through the bathroom, entered. Was your doll playing any beneficial? He asked, smirking. The puppet user flinched, surprised he had been caught. Go sit down, he ordered Kankuro. After he was seated, Ibiki started emitting a sadistic aura. Time up. You now have a choice presented to you. To either take the 10th question, or not to take it, he stated, much to the confusion of the genin. Choose. A familiar voice shouted from the back. Naruto turned to see Temari, whose eyes displayed confused anger. What happens if we choose not to? At that point, Naruto simply stopped caring what Ibiki said. He just kept watching Temari, a small, dreamy smile on his face. Temari caught his gaze and blushed, averting her face and trying to quell the growing blush. Why is he staring at me like that? Ibiki chuckled darkly. If you choose not to, your points will be reduced to 0. You'll be failed along with your teammate. Everyone started to shout in protest, but a sudden bout of killing intent from Ibiki silenced them. Also, if you choose to take it and answer incorrectly, you will lose the right to ever participate in the future Chunin exams. Kiba hollered in anger. What kind of a rule is that? Genin from before were still able to retake the Chunin exams, so why is this exam any different? Ibiki released another dark chuckle. The one gave out when he was being extremely sadistic, the other genin didn't have me as the proctor. My test, my rules. Choose. I haven't got all day. Naruto observed that Ibiki had all the genin quivering now. He waited until several teams had quit to make his move. Lesser the competition, the better their chances, after all. Giving a wink to Temari, whose blush darkened to cover her entire face, he turned around and stood up, all the playfulness from earlier when he was flirting with Temari vanishing from his face. Ibiki stared at the blonde, along with all the others, whose face was set in dead seriousness. His eyelids were half drooped, but he still looked entirely serious. I don't care what happens at all. I have a dream of becoming the Hokage that no one can stop me from achieving. I'll do it even if I have to stay a genin to do so. Do your worst, but know this, he pointed a finger at Ibiki without any fear. Rank means nothing to me, at all. Everyone was watching Naruto with disbelief, who never once broke eye contact with Ibiki. Ibiki himself was thrown off by the sheer conviction displayed in the voice and eyes of a 12-year-old. Sakura was in awe of Naruto's declaration. Sasuke gave a sigh of relief, for he thought Naruto was going to quit. Each of the rookies, except for one or two, held a newfound respect for Naruto. The whole room was silent, and everyone that remained had caught every word. And the results were staggering. Ibiki smirked. Hey, he's interesting. He wiped out everyone's uncertainty. Looking around the room, he counted how many were remaining. 57, huh. There are more left than I expected. There's no point in waiting anymore. Congratulations, you all pass. Ibiki declared, and hied to fight the smile that threatened to appear on his face at the bafflement of as well as the disbelief of the genin. But what about the 10th question? A genin from AIM demanded to know. That was the 10th question. It was a question to test your will and fortitude. As a Chunin, you'll be forced to take tough decisions, and no one needs weak-willed Chunin leading their forces to their deaths. By asking this question, you've shown me your determination and willingness to do the best for your villages, even with handicaps, he explained. Temari spoke once again, so the other questions were for nothing. And once again, she blushed when Naruto turned to stare at her with a smile. No, the test was for info gathering, and to see how much balls you all had, he answered, looking in the direction of Naruto, who turned back and gave a graceful shrug. This marks the end of the first phase of the Chunin selection exams. I wish you luck for the next phase, Ibiki smiled, which was surprisingly pleasant and not all that disturbing. Before he could say anything else, he caught something from the corner of his eyes and stepped back just in time for a ball of cloth to come crashing through the window. Two kunai flew out of the cloth and stuck to the ceiling, unfurling the cloth, revealing a very familiar purple-haired woman wearing a brown trench coat. On the cloth it was written, Second Exam Proctor Mitarashi Anko. You guys. This is no time to be happy. She exclaimed. I am the proctor for the second test, Mitarashi Anko. The real exam starts now. Are you ready? She shouted and pumped her fist into the air. Ibiki came from behind the cloth. Grasp the atmosphere, will you? Anko blushed at his deadpan. Naruto simply sat down and crossed his arms, fondly smiling at her. It had been a while since he saw his sensei, and to be honest, he missed her eccentricities. Anko counted the number of genin left and raised an eyebrow. 57. Ibiki, you let 19 team pass. You let them off too easy. She scoffed. Ibiki shrugged. This time, we have quite an interesting bunch. Anko scoffed and was about to snark back when a familiar mop of blonde hair caught her eye. She smiled proudly when she saw Naruto sitting in the room, fondly smiling at her. As soon as she made eye contact, that smile turned into a smirk and he winked at her. Anko grinned savagely, now that she knew that her best and only student was in the exams. You may be right, Ibiki, she said. However, I'll cut those numbers in half in the second test. That, coupled with her savage grin, was enough to make everyone sweat a little. Naruto just shook his head. His sensei was as intimidating as ever. I will explain the details tomorrow. We will go to another place, so ask your Jonin sensei about where to go and the time. That is all. Dismissed. Everyone stood up to leave, while Anko just smirked and walked in the direction of her former student. Naruto stood up as well, standing just 4 inches short of Anko's height. He waved his teammates away, who were looking curiously, telling them he will catch up later. What's up, brat? I didn't know that you were going to be in this exam. Naruto shrugged, putting his hands in his pockets. Even we didn't know until only a week ago, Anko-sensei. Ibiki raised an eyebrow, coming to stand with them, sensei. So this is the brat Hokage-sama assigned to you. Naruto smiled, his whites showing. Uzumaki Naruto, pleased to meet you. Anko-sensei talked about you occasionally, Ibiki-san. You really did frighten all the genin to death. Ibiki smirked while Anko scoffed. If he really had, there wouldn't be 19 teams left. Ibiki jerked a thumb towards Naruto. You should thank him for that. Brat gave a speech that wiped all the fear I put into them. Anko puffed up proudly, never minding Ibiki's failure. Of course he did. He is my student after all. He was born to be a leader. Naruto smiled, but turned serious, though I do have a concern to raise. His serious tone was enough to catch their attention. What is it, Naruto? Anko asked with a frown. Naruto said, it about a genin named Yakushi Kabuto. He seemed to have some sort of information cards that had info, mainly the mission stats and their strengths and weaknesses, on all the genin present. I can believe it if he only had info on the genin of Konoha, but he also had it on the Sunanin, Gaara. Something that should only be known by the Kazekage and his council. He explained all his observations and conclusions to them. Ibiki and Anko paid serious attention to this, and by the end of his explanation, both were frowning heavily. This is not good, Anko commented. Ibiki nodded, a hard look on his face. If what you say is true, we might have a spy in our midst. And having information like that means he has likely been a spy for years. Who knows what kind of information he has now? Naruto frowned. Even I'm not that sure. As I said, my own observations led me to this conclusion. Regardless of whether he is a spy or not, such matters have to be investigated for that sort of possibility, don't they? Anko nodded. That is true. This matter will be taken to the Hokage immediately, by Ibiki. Ibiki turned on Anko, an incredulous look on his face. You can't order your superior, you know that right? Anko shrugged, putting an arm around Naruto's shoulders, not caring in the least that his face was right next to her assets. I know, but in the light that my student is in the Chunin exams, it is his duty to treat me to dango. Let's go, brat. She started walking, not letting go of Naruto, who was struggling to get out of her embrace. Ibiki smiled and shook his head, muttering, just this time, I'll let this go.